Hello, one and all, to Codeweaver Plays Games. We're going to do a little bit more Kerbal Space Program today. So I had the whole week off, and I didn't get around to any streaming. I decided to just chill out and relax, but I kind of felt the bug today. I'm going to do something just ever so slightly different. I was playing a career mode last time I did this. And, yeah, okay. And so this time, though, I got the bug in myself that I wanted to do a more complex mission than I was capable of doing in career mode. Because I was experimenting with some larger craft, and I built some stuff. So I'm gonna do a Duna mission. I'm gonna do a Duna mission with ships that I've already built, but that I will probably be tweaking as I go along. I'm kind of sort of mid-mission. I'm gonna show you what I mean in a second. But in any case, I just want to get straight on into this. So I think all my audio levels are set up and working. I'm going to switch over to my gaming cam on... Oh, I forgot to switch that over to KSP, so let's find the Kerbal Space Program thing in in OBS. Why do I not have it, and why can I not find it? Really should alphabetize these, shouldn't I? Come on, where are you, Kerbal? Got everything in here except Kerbal, apparently. Okay. We're just going to set this up on the fly then because I can't find it. So we're going to go to window capture. We're going to add an existing. No, we're going to create new. KSP. That's fine. Hit OK. The name is already in use. Of course it is because it's in here. I just can't find it. Ah, there we go. Let's see if that works. Yes, that is now working. Well, first technical glitch of the day, but I think my audio levels are working fine. I'm just going to double check that on the stream. Yes, that appears to be the case. I'm going to switch over to my standard headphones because I've just been listening to the stream on the side. So here's what we've got here. I'm currently in a situation where I've got a number of ships already en route, so I'm going to actually terminate that ship because it doesn't have any characters on it anyway. And I'm going to show you what I got. I'm going to show you what I got by showing you what I launched earlier in the game. You know what? Maybe I won't do that. Maybe I'm going to start this one completely from scratch. Not the building part of it, but the flying part of it anyway. So what we are going to do is we are going to leave facility. We're going to actually go and load up a previous save, which is going to be back here. So we're going to recreate the mission, part of the mission that I already did. I've been doing a bunch of experimental stuff, which doesn't really bear repeating right now, but it was in the attempt to build this craft. So let's see what we got here. We have a ship called the Duna 1B, and it's this Leviathan. Now, actually, the main ship that's important here is this intersection here with the three main columns and the cabin on top, large couple of module to just watch space fly by, and a whole pile of sensors. In fact, I think almost every sensor I can cram on there, plus a mobile laboratory, and I think that's our mobile radio transmitter, so we can send stuff back. I think we've got everything on here that... Oh, that's a survey scanner. Do I actually have a dish? I may not. Oh, yeah, that's the narrowband... it's a narrowband scanner. And on the other side... What do we have here? We have... That's not giving me any information on what that unit actually is. Curious and curiouser and curiouser. What I want to make sure, though, is that I have it. This is why I said I was going to do a few little tweaks along the way. I want to make sure that I have some sort of communication device on here. I got plenty of power. What I need is to be able to... so that's for far more reliable communications, longer ranges than previous models. That's fine. Relay antenna. Lots of relay antennas for like satellites and the like. Blazingly fast directed data transmissions. This is a high gain antenna. How big is this guy? This guy's actually quite enormous. How can we arrange this? You know, we can actually just stick this on the underbelly. That's fairly fairly decent place to stuff that. Really wish I knew what this device was. Anybody recognize this? I was building this craft really rapidly on the fly. Well, we're going to take it out into the launch pad and see if we can activate it from out there. However, we do want to make sure that it's tucked in. What I might do is see if I can stuff this. You see that I've got almost every nook and cranny filled. Specifically, though, I don't want to block access to the cupola. I want to be able to actually see out of it with reasonable. I had that actually attached to that's a little block there. All right. All right. I bet you what I did was I actually attached it to the side of this thing like so. And then I had this thing tucked down like that. That's how I did that. All right, well, every sensor under the sun. So I've also got 2 docking ports on this thing. Now the reason I do that is because I'm taking this out to Duna, but this is not going to be landing on Duna. This is a long-range transport craft, and I've got a large amount of liquid fuel here. I've got some spare rocket fuel that has the oxygen part of it. This is all rocketed across space and time by these nuclear engines here. So slow moving, slow acceleration, but reasonably efficient. So I've got everything I need here to do sort of a mobile science anywhere in the solar system. So I tried to make this sort of my nice universal transport rocket. Problem is, this isn't going down to the surface of Duna. It couldn't make it down and back up again. It doesn't have the delta V to get back up, I don't think. Sorry, the specific impulse to get back up. It needs a lot of punch, even on Duna, to lift this thing off the ground. And I just haven't designed it that way. What I do have is an orbiter that can, what would you call it? A command module that descends. No, what was it called in the Apollo missions? The cabin that actually went all the way down to the moon, the lunar descent vehicle or whatever it was. My God, I'm showing my ignorance of a lot of the terminology and history of the space programs of the world. I apologize. But in any case, that's what the separate docking area is for. I'm basically going to have... I'm going to launch up a separate module, which is the descent vehicle, which operates on a high specific impulse engine to be able to get on and off the surface, to be able to land and then come back up again. But that's going to have to dock separately because I don't want to try to launch the whole thing at once. And more to the point, I want to make sure on purpose that it's dockable and reusable, the descent vehicle, and that this big beast stays in orbit at all times. It might be able to land on something really tiny like Minimus, but it's not really designed for that sort of thing, and I'm never going to do that. It doesn't even have landing gear, and it's not meant to. This port, on the other hand, the problem is I need to be able to refuel this thing. And while I could refuel it by just reusing the top docking port and doing a lot of docking and undocking, what I would like to do on a secondary mission is to have my my descent vehicle on here, mounted and attached, ready to go, and then be able to mount a separate fuel resupply vehicle to this thing and fuel everything all at once so that it's absolutely at the maximum capacity possible for all the kinds of fuel and the support and everything that it needs before it ever leaves Kerbal space. It also means that it's a nice way to refuel from any remote science stations I might have out there. So that's my plan. And I've already built this thing because it took a long while to build. And while it might have been fun to see on stream, I built this when I didn't have access to my streaming stuff, but I really, really wanted to play KSP. So I thought I would share this with you and do a mission. I think I've got all the things I'm going to want on here. Really wish I knew what this was. Is that one of the science boxes? Boxen? Yes, it is. It's the equipment storage unit. So this is something to bring valuable space science back to Kerbal while avoiding the hazards of re-entry, rough landing, and piloting skills. Now, these are all tucked up against the hull, and they should be slightly protected from thermal impacts by the fact of being sort of tucked into the belly here. At least that's what I'm hoping. But I'm never going to be flying face first into anything, and I'm hoping that'll be enough to save all of this. You can see that these two units are slightly protected, I think, by the shadow of these two major pieces of hull. This one's a little risky, and so is this one, but I'm hoping that they'll be okay tucked away like that. We'll find out. I don't plan to, like I said, fly face first into anything anyway. I shouldn't have any of the ports blocked. Let's just launch this thing. Now, for our crew, we have a number of crew here. We are going to specifically be bringing up, a whole bunch of people we're going to be bringing up here, specifically Kerbals and our favorite space ponies. That's right. If you haven't seen the title of my series, I have a Kerbal Space Ponies mod, and it just changes some of the characters so that I have some of my most favorite adorable characters going up into space along with me. But we're also going to be bringing some Kerbals along because we've got lots of seats on this specific flight. We have enough seats for everyone even before we get the deorbiter. This is a place where we can bring lots of Kerbals up and lots of ponies up. And these are the 6 that I'm going to be bringing along with me to form our joint mission. That's right, we're doing a joint mission. So let's just get on with this and see if we can launch this sucker into orbit. Oh, hey, I see I have some viewers. Well, at least I think I have some viewers. Hey, hi, say hi in the chat room if you like. You don't have to. I'm just doing this for fun, as I occasionally do. Right, so this is our beast, and most of this rocketry is just bolted on more and more thrust in order to be able to get this thing into the sky. It's not really any clever asparagus staging. Everything lights at once, and then I peel off some of the stuff. I guess you could call that asparagus, except that really it's just inner rings and outer rings. So there's nothing terribly clever about this. This was just sort of incrementally built. And let's see if we can do this. So the one thing I am going to use is MechJeb, which is a plugin that I love using to take some of the pain out of some of these missions so that I don't have to do a lot of this myself. Now, if you've watched any of the previous bits of my series where I'm doing the career mode, I already demonstrated I can do launches, I can do landings. I haven't done a landing on Duna manually yet, but I will do that on that series eventually. I'm going to use MechJeb for 2 purposes here. Partially because the plugin is in a not quite up-to-date state, and some of the maneuver planning node stuff that it provides me are not functioning right now. In fact, it'll crash the program quite seriously. But its ascent guidance and its landing guidance do work, and I'm going to make use of those just to save a little bit of time, because these things are beasts, and I don't want to spend 4 or 5 times making bad launches when I know I can get a good one if I'm super serious and super careful, and I just want to make this a more fluid experience. So let's try this again. We're going to call this Duna 005 starting live mission. To differentiate it from, use my proper naming convention. Duna starting live mission. All right, so I've engaged the autopilot, which gets me set ready to go. There's a whole bunch of properties here about how you want the ascent to launch. But basically, it would be doing what I would be doing manually, except that it just means that I can hit the launch button to get me into space. And if you like using this to get into space all the time, go for it. I only use this kind of mod after I've proven I can do it myself. At this point, this was more to test out the design of the rocket than it was my piloting skills, so... Now, those lower booster stages also allows me, by the way, to talk, which, hey, didn't want to hear me babble? Why not play it yourself? So, the design of this rocket basically has it so that I maximize the amount of thrust I can get sort of at the beginning of the launch to get me up to speed, so that I don't have as much loss due to fighting gravity as with a slower launch. But eventually I hit maximum air pressure, max Q as they call it, And then I start losing because of friction and not because of gravity. And so that's when the solid rocket should start to burn out, or at least depend less on the solid rockets. Probably overdid it a little with the solid rockets, if I'm honest. As you can see, actually, my liquid rockets are actually providing no thrust of any kind, so this is kind of a little bit solid rocket heavy. I could probably have gotten away with less. But I'm also lifting up a fairly great deal of fuel and so on and so forth. But one of the things I have on this for this particular launch is I'm going to end up with a lot of extra fuel in these liquid rocket stages. So this is over-designed for this purpose. I wanted to make sure that I could get to a fairly large range of Kerbal orbits without relying on the nuclear engines to put myself in whatever position was advantageous. And I could slim this back quite a bit. Oh my god. Alright, so some of the solid fuel is about to run out. You notice, by the way, that as I got further up into the atmosphere, the liquid rockets actually came on while the solids were still firing. And the reason why that is there's this region in the middle of this launch where I still want to press as hard as I can to not lose fuel due to fighting its gravity. But there's a lot of thickness of atmosphere, and so, like I said, pressure is fighting against me. But eventually that pressure runs out, and I want to start applying, again, as much force as I can in the appropriate direction. Bye-bye, solids. And so the liquids start coming online again. So, just like as if I were doing it myself, there's appropriate spots here where I ran out of solids and it kept peeling away the solids and jettisoning them off the sides. And MechJeb does this for me at the appropriate staging, and it controls the ascent profile to the best that it can, often fighting my terrible designs. Tips me over to prepare for the final circularization burn. Let's see, I think these engines are not yet on. And so these internal columns of fuel, the liquid fuel, have not been used yet. There's no cross feed between these liquid fuel stages and the internal ones. So basically, this entire internal ship here that's been wrapped by these other rockets is fuel isolated from the rest of it, so that I know that I'm only burning these outer lifter stages in order to get the primary vehicle into orbit. You'll also notice MechJeb conveniently, once we were up above the atmosphere, deployed the solar panels for us, which is handy. Circularization burn is occurring, and we're getting up to a nice 80 kilometers. It could actually have gone way higher than that. And one of the advantages to going to further to higher orbits is that in order to do low orbits efficiently, you kind of have to cut across the atmosphere a little bit earlier, because you've got to get going sideways a little bit earlier on. When you're going to higher altitude orbits for your first launch, it seems like you go more straight up for more of the early time of the launch, which means you pass through the atmosphere faster. Now you're going to burn a lot more fuel because you're going higher, but that means that you're not spending maybe nearly as much fuel getting up there as you don't lose quite as much. What's a better way to put that? While you do have to spend more fuel getting to a higher orbit and circularizing at a higher orbit, you use a little bit less fuel going through the atmosphere, I think. It's not a one-to-one trade-off, but I probably should have launched that up higher. But it doesn't matter. We'll make it work. So, wait a minute. Why? My orbit altitude is supposed to be at 80 kilometers. How come we're at 110? What the heck happened here? 113, 116. Well, isn't that interesting? Why did it get up to that high instead of only getting to 80? I'm curious. Don't know why MechJeb did that to me. It hasn't done that to me so far. I am not going to question it because I don't want to do the relaunch. But I do find that interesting. It circularized me at a higher altitude than I thought it was going to. It might be, if I think about it, it might be that because I had all those solid fuel stages earlier on and they couldn't be turned off, that I had a lifting profile. I had a gravity turn which MechJib didn't expect maybe, and so it chose to deposit me higher because that's where the periapsis, the apoapsis ended up being. It's my supposition. That might mean I have to adjust my launch vehicle to either lift a heavier craft and burn off more of that solid fuel earlier, or because I don't need all the liquid fuel I have left over, or I don't know, add fit. You know what? Now I have to try this out. This is what we do at KSP. We mess around a little bit, because if we're not, professional engineers or something, mess around a little bit until we figure out what happened. And now I'm just totally curious. That is intriguing. I don't mind having all that lift, but I'd like to get to the actual height that I expected to be at. So I spent a lot of time during that ascent going really fast, but in a straight direction and not having any directional control. And the reason I don't have any directional control is I don't really have particularly big flywheel on this thing. In fact, I have almost no flywheel at all. I think I have one semi-largish one. Where did I tuck that? Is that this? This is the battery. You know what? If I don't already have one, why don't I add one? Clearly have more oomph than I need on this thing. There it is. I do not have one of these anywhere. That would actually tuck in nicely under here. So let's just do this. Because I don't think I have another... I think the only wheel I have is actually in here. I do have a wheel inside the housing of this cabin. But it's not a particularly powerful one, if I recall. And everything below where I've done the cut here is basically fuel. Oh no, they're there. Never mind, I have quite a few big reaction wheels there. I don't need to be screwing with this. That's fine. Alright. That's not the problem. Huh. I don't know why I went up to that kind of height, except that I was unable to control sort of the direction of my flight because I have so much solid fuel thrust going on here. All right, let's do a thing. I love using aeronautic parts on rocketry craft because it makes me smile, especially because you can get in the early stages of the atmosphere, you get a lot of oomph off of a lot of directional oomph off of just having some ailerons. What do you call these things? The control surfaces, winglets. All right. Because I've got a not completely rotationally symmetric shape, and sometimes the symmetry of KSP tries to make a fool of me, I'm going to do this in pairs rather than try to mess around with which parts of the parent parts. Let's see if I can squeeze in. So that should be 2, for 6 fins. Can I get one in the middle here? Not attached to... No, I can't. All right, let's tuck in another pair. So the 2 on the side here, I kind of want another because I only have the... No, I have 2 there, 2 on that side, and then... See, 2, 4 on that side, and then 2 and 4 on the on this axis. Well, let's find out if that gives us any additional control. And those are going to get peeled away by the time we're in space, so we don't carry that around with the rest of our craft. All right, let's try this. Now I could fix the height of the launch that I intended here, the orbital altitude in MechJeb, by fiddling with this and make it 200 or something, which would be perfectly fine for this kind of launch. But I want to find out if I can tell. God, that is a beast. This is probably not an efficiently designed craft. I want to see if I can figure out why MechJeb got us orbiting at a higher altitude. Now, MechJeb's super clever, does all sorts of calculations for you, and also tries to dynamically, you know, adjust things as it goes in order to achieve the orbital properties, but it's not always perfect, and it probably never can be without literally rerunning the real sim over and over and over again and zeroing in on the right answer, which it does not do, as far as I know. Alright, so again, watch. We have no thrust from the liquid rockets, which also means no thrust to help vectoring or direction. I could actually force it to give a minimum amount of thrust, but I'm not going to do that just now. What that means is I'm going up almost entirely because of straight rocket thrust, solid rocket booster thrust, which means that what I have to do in order to change direction is either use the reaction wheels, or alternatively use ailerons. Not ailerons, the winglets. Control surfaces. Rotating wings. But I'm not turning very fast, so as long as I have something in the thick atmosphere that can keep me going along the intended ascent profile. Yeah, see that? The liquid fuel came online at about the time that the atmosphere started to thin out, because we want to spend more time going faster. Like, we want to accelerate as hard as possible because we're no longer fighting air, so that's not a limiting factor, the apparent flames notwithstanding. I want to lose as little as we can to G-forces. There go our first layer. Okay, so let's start taking a look at the... Come on. Where's my map? Thank you. Yeah, it's overshooting. And I don't know why. I have to assume it's because it has not enough control over both direction and thrust at during the solid booster stage. Because usually, MechJeb's pretty good about that sort of thing. But we're going to find out on the next craft, because I'm not relaunching this one. And I'm not going to try to fly this one myself. It's not worth my time or your time. I'll do that on my career mode. For anybody just joining in, I'm doing this on Sandbox mode because I did some builds of some bigger craft when I didn't have access to OBS, and I just wanted to share it with everybody by doing a mission with them. All right, so MechJeb's doing its job. It's just doing it at an altitude I didn't expect. Now, this isn't a bad thing either, because I need to launch the descent vehicle, and that's going to happen in a separate launch. And that one has a much smaller solid booster phase. And I'm hoping that it will get up to the altitude actually set. Now, I have to set it at a different altitude because I'm not going to be able to launch it with the precise timing to get it into orbit at exactly the right point in time to match up with the craft. I'm not that good, and I'm not going to spend time sort of experiment. Like I'm not going to do the math. I'm not going to spend the time doing multiple launches to try to get that timing right. What I am going to do is I'm going to launch it into a different circular orbit, and then I'm going to match orbits because that's doable. All right, so it did the circularization burn. Anyway, the point being is that I'll just launch the other one at 80 kilometers and make sure or see if that works out. I wonder if I didn't notice it was doing that before, or whether or not it's always been doing that and I just didn't notice. Anyway. All right, so we got 3 of our mission specialists up there in the vehicle that will eventually be used for long distance transport. Now, I'm not going to jettison these. Like these liquid stages are not going to stay here. But because we've got the extra fuel, we're going to use those liquid fuel stages in order to top up the fuel on the next rocket that we're going to bring up. And we are also going to use it as a booster stage to get this going to out of Kerbal space and off to Duna. The ship is designed to do that on its own with the nuclear engines and all this fuel, and with plenty of fuel left over. But heck, as long as we've got this extra fuel, why not use it, right? So that is where Valentina, Bill, and Bob are going to be left for the moment. I think, let's just double check that we have a nice circular orbit here. Do we have to do a circularization pass? Oh, that's bad. Yeah, that did not circularize well at all, did it? All right. We have a little bit more work to do here then. Apparently, I have managed to confuse MechJeb with this beast of a ship. That's most curious. Oh well. So I am getting the ship point at prograde in order to do a bit of a boost. And actually, as long as we're here, let's just add a maneuver. Let's kind of do this properly, and let's see if we can circularize this in one go. So that's 109 and 51, 100 and 111, 109 and 102. Let's get this a little closer to circular. 112 and 104 came a little bit too far. Now I'm adjusting 107, 109. It's getting pretty close here. Yeah, that'll do. All right, so I was both pushing my apoapsis out in order to raise it, which I'm going to have to do. Uh-oh. I'm going to be starting this burn a little late, but that's all right. We'll make it work. I was also adjusting the radial points in order to not just raise my height, but to sort of slide the ring around, like pivot it around the point of my craft. There we go. That's looking pretty good. How'd we do? 104 to 107. All right, so let's add another maneuver here. And we're going to see if we can 105 and 107. The reason to use this sort of the radial maneuver nodes is you can imagine grabbing a hold of my orbit at the point of my ship like a hula hoop and sort of rotating it in place about my craft to kind of rotate the entire thing a little bit. And this helps when you're not specifically at apoapsis or periapsis to kind of adjust both at the same time. And since I wasn't right at apoapsis, this helps me circularize it sort of here, somewhat inefficiently, but I got fuel to burn. Call it an advanced circularization technique. Don't know if it has a technical name of any kind. Don't really care. All right, here we go. All right, so there we go. It's very nearly circular. Good enough. We're going to save it. Now we are going to go back to the Space Center and launch the descent vehicle. Ha 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 ha. All right. Now let's see if MechJeb is completely broken or whether it's not just because I did a really ridiculously big ship that cut through the atmosphere with big honking rockets. So we want to go with not Rocket Fuel 1, Phobos 1, which is not this guy, but this guy. And you can see it's a much smaller vehicle. Now it's this top section here, right down to this decoupling ring, I think here, that actually will be attached to the ship. And this is the craft that's actually going to descend down to Duna. And the design is such that it's got a fairly wide base. It's got a whole pile of scientific instruments on it, but not the processing bay. But all the stuff that can actually gather science. It's got enough room for three passengers in the upper section here. Pilot, engineer, and scientist, and so they can do all the things they're supposed to do when they get down here. It's got some lights, it's got a landing ladder, ways to basically extend the ladder. Actually, we can take this and we can, hang on a second. Let's retract that ladder. Yeah, but the neat thing about this is I don't like leaving junk parts in space if I can find it. Stuff that has to peel off the craft and sort of tumbles to the ground and explodes either on rotor when it hits the ground. That's okay because that stuff just gets cleaned up on Kerbal, and I can live with that. All that's we got a great trash collection part of our agency. I absolutely mandate it, but to the extent that the big stuff, I don't want the big stuff floating around in space, and I'd actually like to return as much of it as I reasonably can. So within reason, I'm still going to use solid boosters for my first stage, though. So. The advantages to this particular beast are that it can lift all of this stuff into orbit and then return this lower stage, hopefully to the ground. And it's got enough equipment on it to land, one would hope. So the booster stage is largely able to be returned. Not all of it, obviously. Let's give it a shot. Phobos 1 needs a crew. Phobos 1 has all of our ponies as part of the crew, so they are going to go up in this vehicle. And so let's get this stage of the dual mission started. Is there anything else I want to point out about this? Not really. I think we're good to go. Except that I do want to make sure that effectively... don't know if I've done this already. If there's any fuel to be used, I don't want it to be used out of the main capsule. So actually, I should probably have done this back in the VAB, but can I do it here? I want to disable cross feeds down to... I don't know if I can do this, actually. I might not be able to. Oh, well, whatever. I'll rebalance it when I get up to the top. But this is all liquid, standard fuel, rocket fuel stages, so oxygen and liquid fuel. Engage the autopilot. Let's see if it can actually get to 80 kilometers this time. Hit the launch button. Very, very similar. As fast acceleration as we can manage right up to the point at which we can't go any faster without being inefficient for the use of because of friction with the thicker atmosphere. Then rely on smaller amounts of thrust, specifically the liquids, for the remainder of the journey, and accelerating at the top end of the atmosphere. And there we go. There's separation. And there's bring up maximum thrust a half second later or so. All right. We're building up some decent speed here. Dash is looking particularly excited. Keep your hands on the joystick there, Dash. All right. So we're getting to the point where we are above the atmosphere, and it's not going to matter so much that we have the fins. You can see actually the point at which the atmosphere is pretty thin is not that high up, and that once we're at this spot, we want most of our thrust to be going to increasing our sideways motion. We don't want to be going to apoapsis really early and then basically trying to go sideways. That's not an efficient use of fuel. But if you turn over too early, you end up fighting against atmosphere too early. So yeah, there is friction here, but that's coupled with the fact that we're going at a stupid speed, so it's not all that surprising. I'm a little surprised this hasn't exploded, but the atmosphere is continuing to thin out as we do this. Now you can see the apoapsis here has gotten to exactly 80 kilometers where, bing, we stop. So yeah, the reason why MechJeb got confused, I don't know the internals of how it works, but I'm willing to bet that it was doing its best to try to keep to the launch profile, but because it couldn't control the engines and the direction of the craft like it wanted to on the way up, it probably pushed higher and then compensated at the top end when it realized where it was going to end up. So, and I don't mind that, because there's a difference here, I can exploit that, because I was going to need that anyway. This one is not going to have a lot of liquid fuel left over, though. And I do want to have enough left over in the upper stage, or in that lower stage, to return the lower stage home. I'm actually not going to spend a lot of fuel using this to using this craft to change the orbits. I got plenty of fuel in the other craft, lots of fuel. And I can also bring up a separate fuel rocket if I need to. See if I can't accelerate this along a little bit faster. MechJeb does its own warp staging most of the time, but it is a bit conservative about it in some cases, which is fine. So here we go, circularizing at exactly 80 kilometers up. No drama, just done. And we end up with a periapsis and an apoapsis of 80 kilometers and change, and just under 80 kilometers on this side, and that's good enough. That's fine. All right, so now we have to get these two matched. Now, the one that we just launched, Phobos 1, is actually going to be coming along its orbit ever so slightly faster than the large orbiter, and I don't want to use any more fuel from Phobos 1 because I want this fuel to be available for landing. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit the magic quick save button, and we are going to decouple these craft. Now, this craft has a computer-controlled module on it in order to act as a primitive pilot. And that's good because we're going to use that to fly this guy back down independently, which is why we switched over to it. And we're not going to use the ascent guidance. Again, I'm going to use MechJeb to make this a little bit faster. That way I don't have to do this manually. I can, like I said, proven I can do it manually. So here we go. We're just going to say, try to land somewhere near KSP. Or the KSC pad, sorry, the mission control basically. And then we're going to land at target. And it does a time warp to get us into approximately the right spot to do that. Now, because of the separation force that separated the two pieces of the craft, you can see that one of the pieces of our craft, the actual part that we're interested in, separated from us quite a bit, so that our two orbits actually differed by ever so slightly. It's all real physics. So it ended up on a slightly different trajectory, which enabled it to go a little bit faster for part of its orbit, a little bit more elliptical than ours. Or ours is a little bit more elliptical than it. In any case, they were slightly different. So it ended up at about the same height, but slightly ahead of us. And that's fine. Just do be aware that when you separate your craft, it's going to change your orbit. Now, the landing guidance system goes through a whole bunch of complicated stages, one of which is to get to the right point where it's going to start its descent, do a deorbit burn to drop the periapsis, the low point in our orbit, into the atmosphere just a bit. It tries to take into account, to some degree, how much atmosphere you're traveling through and the increasing thickness of it to sort of start by landing ahead of where you really want to land. Past where you really want to land, because in going through the atmosphere, it's going to shorten that distance. And it's also going to make some minor course corrections, like you can see here, in order to effectively get the right landing course down, so that taking into account the friction on the way down, it'll be able to land you at the right spot. Now, it has a little bit of trouble on, I guess, on big craft coming in really shallow, like we are, because we were only 10 kilometers above the surface of the atmosphere, which means it probably will overshoot this by more than I want to, but that's okay. That means I'm going to be landing in the ocean just past Mission Command. Now, if I came in more steeply, that difference becomes more and more negligible. It'll tend to overshoot less. Just in practice, from what I've been playing with, I don't have any theoretical reasons why better atmospheric modeling couldn't do it first time or something, but that's not really the point. This kind of stuff is really hard to do. So you can see it got my trajectory going down to the atmosphere. We are now going into the atmosphere, so we can only do up to 4 times time warp right now. It is attempting to do additional minor course corrections while it's in the upper atmosphere. You will notice that I, on purpose, disabled the fins, and the reason for that is they're not very helpful when going the wrong direction. I haven't found a way to cause their behavior to reverse when it's on the trailing edge of a craft, and I didn't provide a way to get rid of them independent of the craft. So I'd rather them not be screwing with the steering of the craft at all on the way back into the atmosphere. Instead, I'm relying exclusively on this inline stabilizer module. And that should be enough to keep it pointed in the right direction on the way down. MechJeb is, of course, doing the job of steering as long as the landing guidance system is active. It's a little bit like using the SAS, except it's a little bit more sophisticated. This, of course, gives me pretty much nothing to do while I'm sitting here, which is less fun than you might think. But this isn't the part that I sort of want to explore all that much. I'm trying to force it to use higher physics warp on the way down, but it's not letting me. I think that's, again, MechJeb being very, very conservative about the arrival, which I guess I don't mind because landing is tough. Why make it harder? You can see the heating up. And while it's taking a very slow time to come down, I'm quickly going to refill my beverage. Which means I've got to go way into the back of my apartment where you can't see me. Not that you could see me. I haven't turned the webcam on. Not anybody cares to look at my mug while I'm doing this. Alright. So, coming into the thicker parts of the atmosphere, you notice I don't have a heat shield. This is a little bit dangerous, as that bell doesn't have infinite resistance to heat, and neither do the fins for that matter. But unless you got really super sensitive equipment, re-entry on Kerbal, you can usually survive a bell downward landing like this. There we go, beverage acquired. Right. So if I were doing this manually, this is just basically where I would have gotten lined up, retrograde pointing, and that's all that MechJeb's really doing right now. So we're coming over the mountain range that's just in front of Kerbal headquarters, and what I might actually try to do is, as I'm coming in low enough over the plains, actually that might not have been the mountain range, it might be this, where is it? No, that was the mountain range outside of Mission Command. There is the peninsula on which headquarters is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily abort the autoland. Do I not have any fuel? Do I not have my engine bell? What the heck, man? I'm not entirely sure why I don't have my rockets. Curiouser and curiouser. Activate the engine, please. Have I lost... Oh, have I lost electrical power? No, I still have electrical power. But you can see I'm overshooting. I was actually trying to avoid that by applying my rockets. Oh, it's still... There must have been a time warp factor going on here. Okay, you know what? Let's do this. As it's coming around, let's provide a great big old rocket boost. It's coming around again. Let's do another big old rocket boost. We'll actually get this aimed a little bit more in the direction of Kerbal Space Command. Except now I have almost no fuel, so let's go land somewhere. Alright. Didn't think I'd have to fight MechJeb there quite as much as I did, but that's alright. It doesn't matter. I also, by the way, reactivated the autoland to just land anywhere it could find at this point, because it no longer matters to try to pick a specific spot. Now let's see, how slow am I getting? The drogue chutes slowed me partway. That's great. Let's see if the main chutes provide enough drag. So one of the nice things about the landing system is that it will try to use the rockets, the main rockets, or any rockets you have, to soften the landing. I'm already going at only about 12 meters per second on landing. It's a little rough on the engine bell, but that's in and of itself probably landable. But that also means that I don't have to apply a lot of rocket thrust to get into a safety sort of safety landing speed. Will mean for an awfully soft landing though, which probably means I won't tip over. So I don't have any landing gear on this thing. Probably should add landing gear onto this thing. So we don't have a lot of spare fuel. So that'd be more mass to lift all the way up and all the way down again. And we can't... Can't accelerate it any harder. That's fine. Here we go. It's applying a little rocket thrust to come down as gently as possible. And touchdown. And we're going to recover the vessel quickly before it has a chance to tip over. Because I probably should have put landing gear on that. All right, so that got the booster stage back down and recovered, which is great. But now we have the actual problem of getting these two ships docked. So let's do that, shall we? So, welcome to the tracking station. We're going to... Now, what we're going to do is we are actually going to, instead of trying to bring the landing module up to the transport craft, the main rocket, the ferry, if you like. Let's call it a ferry. Duna 1B. We're actually going to bring Duna 1B down because we have piles of extra fuel there. So why not just use a little bit of that? Piles of extra fuel we're going to effectively end up throwing away. So here we go. We want to bring this beast down in orbit until we can get it to the lander. So that means, let's take a look at this carefully. Phobos 1 is on an inner orbit. It's going to get there faster. It's going to get around the planet faster than Duna 1B. So we are going to let me see here. Set Phobos 1 as the target. How far off are we on the orbital planes? Nothing. They are effectively both circular orbits in the same plane. That's good. So MechJet did a good job there. Otherwise, this is the first thing we would have to do is get them both orbiting on the same plane. We can skip that step. We're close enough. The orbits are both not perfectly circular, but pretty close. So we don't have to do any circularizations to make this easier either. So what we're then going to do is we're just going to drop the orbit of Duna B until it just touches Phobos 1. Now, if MechJib were properly working, like if it had been updated to work with this version of KSP, I would probably use it to do all of these before, to do all of this for me, in terms of, again, setting up the appropriate nodes instead of me mucking around with it. And I did do a little bit of that on my career mode, because I was using a previous version of KSP for that, apparently, I'm guessing. So what that means is I do actually have to do this a little bit manually. So here we go. We're going to drop our orbit until it just crosses. And not only... It's a little hard to see. It's the best way to show this, actually. So you can see here very faintly. I don't know if it shows up on the stream, but hopefully you can see a little orbital marker I've got at the end of my arrow here. This is the orbit coming in closer towards the outer orbit, coming in closer towards the inner orbit because of the burn I'm about to do. Now, I know that they're getting close enough to touch because you see here, they might not be touching just yet. So let's try to pull it in a little further. Did I lose this as my target? Yes, I did. That's why I'm not seeing it. So these two markers here are intersection points, effectively, with the target orbit, or the object, in any case, that's on that orbit. But you can see that they're quite spread ways apart. But I want to make sure that we don't have a situation. You can actually see there's two intersect points, intersect 1 and intersect 2. And this happens when your two orbits, one of them crosses the other completely and then crosses it again on the way back out. But by adjusting this, we should be able to get those two to come closer together. You can see that they pull apart here. There's intersection 1 and 2, and they're separated. But if I push the orbit, the periapsis of the orbit back out again, they will get closer and closer until they just touch, which means this is a point where it's not crossing over and back again, it's just touching. So this is where it's getting, where the orbits are just touching, and if it's really hard to see that dotted line where they get really, really close together, and they're presumably just touching around the periapsis point, which means we only have one intersection point instead of two. Complicated way of saying I'm just making sure that I'm just touching one orbit with the other and I'm not crossing over and back. That's all I'm really doing. The problem is that the closest point of intersection at this point is when these two, this is where the craft will be when they are at closest approach. And that's way too far. That's like a quarter of a planet away. And if we move the timing, I've described this in my other videos a bit, but if I adjust the timing of when I do the orbit, I can get those a little closer together, but not close enough in one orbit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say go to next orbit and see if that's better. And it should be. Yes. So now the next orbit, or complete orbit around, the two craft at the closest point they can possibly be is closer than it was before. And closer, and closer, and now we're so close that next orbit is probably going to overshoot. So instead I'm going to just adjust the orbital marker, the mission marker, to find out where I have to be in the circuit. But unfortunately, if I go too far, then I'm in the previous, or I'm in the at the end of that orbit instead of at the beginning, which means I overshot in terms of the orbit. So let's go back one and then move this around far enough and see if I can get them to... Oh, come on. And I accidentally got rid of the orbit. All right, let's start that all over again. Here we go. Add a maneuver, please. We got to pull it down until we get just touching. So you'll see when I cross over, and then there it is, crossover, right when I get two markers instead of one, two different colored markers, and it's indicating I'm crossing over and back. So that's about where I want to be. Not quite. There we go. And now slide this around, and the two ships are too far apart. Actually, there we go, that's better. The two ships are going to be too far apart. That's not two intersection points, that's the two ships at the one closest intersection point. So I have to go right click and go forward in the orbit, forward in the orbit, forward in the orbit by entire orbits. Now they're super, super close, and so I should be able to just adjust the timing a little bit to get them super duper close. Now, one way to do this is to slide it back and forth and just keep double checking like this. 0.4 kilometers is really close. If I move it ahead and they start to separate, you'll see that it gets bigger. That's 2.8 kilometers difference. If I go back the other way, I'll get it better again. But another way to do this, which is semi-recent, depending on how much you call recent, is to have all this instrumentation regarding maneuvers and orbits. Now, if I've got this selected on maneuver as the thing I want to describe, I can set it for the approach info for Phobos 1, which enables me to see that the closest point, the intersection time is in 2 hours, and will be at 377 meters. Is the closest point of intersection. And what this means is I can watch this number in real time now as I slide this around. Just by sliding the timing around, you can see that I can get it down as close as, I had it at 399, but it hops around a bit. 377 is about the best I can do just by adjusting the timing. That is really close. But what I want to do is make really fine adjustments to this, and so I can go to the graphical maneuver editor, and this is now a copy effectively of these controls, but these ones can be made much finer grained by adjusting the stepping value. I'm going to make it super small adjustments, which is still way too much adjustment, but now I can tweak this. Oops. Oh, and so you can see how much I jump around with that, right? So I'm going to use this one instead, and this one should enable me to do it by much smaller variations, and you can see by sliding this a little bit, I can experiment a little bit and find the minimum value here. With the super advanced versions of MechJeb, when it's working, will do all this work for you. I can't really tweak it much better than what I'm seeing here, not by much. But what I can do, having gotten as good as I can there, is I can... that did not work very well at all, did it? You can start adjusting with some of these other parameters to see if it's just a minor tweak in one of the other directions. That might improve it. That did not work. Let's try to do it here. Yep, I can get it even better. So what this is telling me is that because this particular adjustment to the orbit is actually pushing either up or down at the point at which I apply, at the point at which I do the maneuver, that means that this is effectively tilting the orbit, which means that adjusting this one is, unless it's directly opposite to where I'm doing the maneuver, it's probably adjusting the tilt ever so slightly of the orbits, which means maybe it wasn't a completely 0 degree. Oh, it's getting worse again, but now I can start fiddling with the other one again. And I can just basically drunkard walk this way down to... It's basically a hill climb or a hill descent in adjusting these parameters. Just tweaking it back and forth, trying to find a good low value in here. But you know, 192 meters is nothing to sneeze at. Anything sub a kilometer is great. Now, these ships are big. These ships are stupidly big. I mean, they're not the biggest I've ever built, but they are still really big, and I don't have a whole lot of turning control on them, and I don't want to use RCS fuel to help if I can avoid it, because that's at a premium. So what I'm going to do is, before I even get to that node, I'm going to, much earlier than I get there, I'm going to set my SAS to say follow the maneuver node. That way I get into the right orientation before I ever get to that point in the orbit. And this just means I get myself sorted out in the right direction early, because it's going to take many seconds to crank this around. Now you're going to ask the obvious question as to why the SAS doesn't do great circle routes across the gimbal. You got me. I don't know what the reason for that is. I'd love if somebody could tell me. It does seem to take a bit of a circuitous route in reorientation when the reorientation is along, but whatever. It might be because it's easier to spin on one axis than another on this particular craft. Okay, so I'm in the right orbital alignment for when I get to this node, which admittedly is not that long from now. So I can hit F5 to lock just quick save and lock everything in. And then we're going to accelerate to the right point in time by saying, this is not a MechJeb thing, none of this bit is MechJeb stuff. Just to orbit ahead to the right orbit. Remember that we had to go several orbits ahead in order to set up this maneuver node correctly. And we are now at 52 seconds. Now, we have a very short burn, and I don't want to do a very short burn at very high acceleration, so we're going to make some adjustment here. Normally, I'd take this time, divide it in two, and that's the time ahead that I want to start in order to split my time across the point of the node, which I like doing. I like having half my time before and half my time after, which is a good rule of thumb. However, I'm going to do it at 1/4 thrust, which means I need 4 times the amount of acceleration for these kinds of short bursts. And so I'm going to multiply this value by 4 first. That takes us to 4 seconds. I'm then going to cut it in half and split that time across the node, which is 2 seconds. So I want to be T minus 2 seconds before I start the burn, but I'm not going to do full thrust. So here we go. About a quarter-ish. It's not bad. Not fabulous, but it's not bad. So canceling the node, let's find out what our actual nearest approach was. Less than a kilometer. That's great. All right. So here's the thing. First of all, F5. Save now, save often, save again, save over. Right. So we're going to attempt to match velocities. And again, something I'd let Jeb set up the maneuver node for if I could, but I can't. So I have to do this manually. Lots of manual stuff, just not launches and landings for this particular mission. All right, so I'm going to want to be able to zero out my velocity relative to the target by the time I get here. So we're going to set this to target mode. All right, but the thing is I don't want to guess as to which direction I'm going to have to be facing when I get there. And rather than work it out on the gimbal and do that in my head or experiment, I'm going to use a maneuver node, but only for the sake of orientation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a maneuver node here, and I'm going to say, well, I'm probably going to want to apply a force. I'm coming in, so let me think about this a minute. I'm coming in from a high orbit to a lower orbit, which means I'm going to be moving faster than my target. So I'm probably going to want to be thrusting backwards along my orbit in order to slow down. Now, what I really want to do is slow down relative to my target and not relative to my own orbit. But they're probably going to be pretty close to the same as I approach this, because I'm going to be approaching from behind. So by setting up a maneuver node that points backwards, I don't have to use any of its duration of burn properties or any of that. But it does give me an idea on to which direction I'm likely to want to thrust. Because I'm not at that point. I'm way over here. So the direction I actually want to burn is not sort of anti-velocity to where I'm currently pointing. And I don't want to adjust when I get there. Because it'll take too much time, as you can see right here. So in order to get into the right orientation early, I'm just using a maneuver node to figure out a direction. Just so I can get into that direction. And then I'm going to get rid of the maneuver node. You see this early sort of goofy reorientation that the SAS is doing to me, but that's all right. Okay, I'm going to use warp physics to get us there a little bit faster. And then slow down warp physics. So there we go. That's just accelerating the physics engine for a brief period of time. All right, I'm in alignment. But what I'm going to do now is get rid of the maneuver node, and I'm just going to lock in my orientation. So I'm hoping that when I get over to this other side, save again, as I approach, I'm going to be in kind of the right orientation already. So I'm going to click, say about here. I'm not going to add a maneuver. I'm just going to say warp here. All right, now what I really want to do, though, is I want to go anti-target. Oh, and I'm getting a little bit too quickly. I should have given myself more leeway. I'm really booking it in here. Well, this is why I have a... I did say anti-target, didn't I? Why am I going way around here? Because I have goofed this up. So I didn't give myself enough leeway in timing. Apparently anti-target is not where I thought it was going to be, so this is why we do a revert, quick little revert, nothing major. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a lot more leeway. So I guessed wrong, actually. The direction that I set up pointing anti-orbit is not the anti-velocity direction for my target, so... Oh, actually maybe it was. I gotta think about this. I goofed that. Let's do exactly what I did before. I gotta rethink this. So I don't have to rethink it. I just have to... Oh, God, what did I do here? Come on. Set as target. Okay, got my target back. I'm gonna do this again. I set myself right here, just like I did before. I'm gonna warp here. Now what I want to do is I don't want to go anti-target. I want to go retrograde. So this is the thing. Anti-target would point me away from the other craft, but I'm going kind of alongside it a little bit, so I don't want to go anti-target. I want to go anti-target velocity, which is what this is. And it's what prograde and retrograde mean, because prograde and retrograde on this are relative to whatever it is you're measuring against. So here we go. We're closing in, but I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to apply the thrust now. But you can see that I'm losing speed relative to the target. Now the question is, at this point, how close am I? I'm actually heading away from it, which is a bit of a problem. So again, I didn't give myself enough time to do this properly, so let's do this one more time. I'll be a little bit more careful, because I'm using very, very powerful rockets to try to stabilize my velocity. Give myself just a little bit of extra time. So let's try this one more time. A little bit of extra time. Warp here instead. Okay, now retrograde, please, which is over here. And I'm going to use the physics acceleration feature to move time ahead just a little bit faster. Okay, now I've got a little bit more leeway in time. Now this is my anti-target velocity direction. Rather than pointing away from it, I'm pointing in a way that will slow me down relative to it. And these can differ if I am not heading directly toward or away from it. It can mean that I'm side by side, which is kind of what's actually happening here. So I'm getting very close to being side by side. I'm creeping up on it a little bit faster than it's moving. But rather than point at it, I want to point in a direction that's opposite the satellite's motion so that I stop relative to the satellite. That's what I actually want to do. And when this is set to target, program retrograde are relative to that other craft. So what we're going to do now is, as we get closer here, just going to accelerate time a little bit because I want to start slowing down as I get a little bit closer to this. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to apply a little bit of thrust. And I make a judgment call. Is that going to slow me down fast enough so that I hit 0 when I get close enough to this? I am. So now I've stopped thrust because I don't want this to start shooting too far ahead of me, because that means I'm pushing out the point of closest intercept too far into the future, and I don't want that running away from me. I actually want to end up with this being on top of me roughly when I hit 0. That would be sort of the best possible world. I'll still be separated sideways by a little bit. By about 0.4 kilometers, actually, but that's okay. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I want to sneak up on this a little. Oh, there we go. About that. Now, I'm still ignoring these markers now. Let's just ignore them for the moment. Now I'm really super close. I'm about 0.4 kilometers. I'm increasing a little bit, but what I want to do is I'm still pointing anti-target velocity. So I'm just going to keep applying thrust until this literally gets down to 0. Now I'm not moving relative to that craft. Now that still means that we have a bit of a separation. Killing the velocity difference doesn't mean that I've killed the distance difference, but it does mean that the only thing that's going to separate us now is going to be our difference in orbits are different by about 0.4 kilometers. And that difference in orbit will probably change our relative speed and spacing over enough time. So now what I want to do is I actually want to point at the thing, because our relative velocities have kind of zeroed out, not completely, but enough that now I can spend a little bit more time dealing with the distance problem and less about the fact that we're like flinging ourselves away and towards each other. Now what I'm going to do is, instead of point right at the thing, which would be here, I'm going to point on the other side of it so that I can line up the forward direction against the actual target. So I'm going to lock us in here, apply a little bit of thrust, which is actually going to increase our relative speed, but it's going to do so in a direction that actually closes the gap, and you can actually see that the distance is now decreasing. Slowly, but it is decreasing. And I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to adjust this by coming onto the other side of this marker. And it's not quite centered, which means I'm not quite aimed directly at it, but that's okay. I'm still approaching, and you can tell that because of the distance closing here. The alignment of this means that we're heading towards it rather than away. And the separation of these two markers is enough to tell us how far off our direction is. Ideally, I want to be pointed at it and closing that gap faster. We are closing the gap. I want to close the gap a little faster than this. I'm going to try to accelerate. No, accelerating physics is dodgy when you're this close because the markers tend to hop around a little bit for internal reasons of you controlling one craft and trying to match up to the other. They're not aligned in time. All right. There we go. How fast are we closing? Pretty quick. All right, we want to again, we could say point anti-target, which is very close to, at this point, to anti-velocity vector, but I don't really care. I don't really want to specifically head away from it. What I really do want to specifically slow us down relative to it. That's almost the same thing, but I want to make sure that I specifically zero velocity. Now it should be, there it is, coming up behind us here. Because we knew we were getting closer, and we knew that does mean that it should be in the direction of the pointing of the back end of our ship. And again, the anti-velocity vector is drifted off of the towards the craft, the away from the craft vector. So yeah, this guy is direction of position. This guy is direction of velocity. And whenever you're in two different orbits, those are going to drift apart a little bit. So here we go. When we get quite close, it's getting pretty close actually, we are going to, just as it seems to be passing us by, we're going to zero out our relative velocities as best we can. Now hit F5. We are now in a position where we can probably dock these two craft. A lot of work just to get two ships docked, especially when they're this big. You can't just zip around until you get it right. You have to be a little bit careful. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start setting some targets, specific targets. Now we should be able to click specifically on the other craft's docking port, which I know is at the end of the craft. So we're going to basically say target that docking port, and our command module, we're going to say basically control from here. So we're going to control specifically from our own docking port. So these are basically the two things that we want to sort of line up. Control from one, target another, and now we can go full target mode. Which is going to spin this craft around really, really slowly. But the drift between our two crafts is minimal, and it's going to get even less as we get closer together. So just accelerating physics. Again, you can see our towards the craft vector is slightly different from our velocity difference vector, and that's because different orbits, we're drifting a little bit, but that's okay. So now we're going to impart a little bit of forward velocity, but only a little. You can see that it's not quite where we want it. Can we... How close is that looking? It's looking pretty close. Yeah, okay, I don't want to risk this. I was going to start to use the mains in order to be able to get these, the velocity and the position vectors aligned again, but I think that's risky. So now that I've got one of them aligned, I'm going to go to the other one and align it too. So for you, we're going to target this docking port, and we don't really have to say control from here for this one, but we will anyway. And now we're going to, the reason being is that we're already pretty much pointed straight up. And now we're going to hit target. That aligns that. Now we're going to use a little bit of the mains on this one. Has this been activated yet? No, it has not. So we're going to say activate that engine. We're going to do just a little bit of a burst, just enough to build up some velocity in that direction. We have a lot more maneuverability on this craft, so we are going to use the mains to align this a bit here. All right. So we're going to thrust a little bit to the side to bring those two in alignment, and that's pretty good. I don't really want to be going much faster than this anyway. Can we maybe just tweak it a little? It's pretty close. See, now though we're at 0.3 meters per second, and my only way to reverse thrust at this point is to use the RCS, which I'm a little bit reluctant to do because I don't have a lot of it, and I'm not bringing up any more. However, time to actually do that. So now we're going to use the RCS thrusters in order to be able to do sideways thrusting in order to get this alignment working. Now we're still heading towards our target. It's really slow, but if we get a side view on this thing, you can see that the gap is closing. We don't really want to collide these much faster than this. One of these craft is pretty tiny, so that's not that big a deal. But actually, we can use the mains for that again. So let's just close that gap just a little bit faster. Now, instead of actually accelerating, I'm going to use physics acceleration to speed up the gap closing time here. But you can see, again, our difference in orbits has drifted our velocity vector and our position vector out a little bit. So fiddling with the RCS a little bit will realign these without rotating the ships. So I want them to stay pointing at each other, right? But, all right, so here we go. They're coming in pretty quick. Let's see if we can do a little bit of backwards RCS to reduce the speed. Yes, we can. The problem is if we bounce off of it, then the magnetic couplers are just going to take even longer to connect. So doing this very slowly is good. There we go. Perfect. Haha. Turn off RCS. We don't want that doing anything at this point. All right. We have docked the two craft. I'm now going to say basically control from here to basically make sure we're controlling from what we consider to be the nose of the ship. We're also going to, on purpose, disable this engine because we don't want to turn it on when we're turning the rest of this on. All right. We have docked the two ships. Now, question. How much fuel have we used from here? Nothing from the main tanks. Very little. We've used almost no fuel of any kind, even though we did use the mains. Like, trivial amounts anywhere, so... Question, do I have automatic feeds going between these side tanks and the primary? I might not have. I might need to do manual transference of fuel. I thought I had. Well, that's a design glitch. Well, that's all right. It just means if I have to transfer it, I'll have to transfer it manually. These are not just acting as extra fuel; they're also acting as making the craft wider for landing. So that's fine. How did we do on RCS? A little bit of monopropellant, but almost nothing. So we were very judicious about the use on that as well. We are nearly ready to do our Duna run. We have piles of extra fuel everywhere. We almost didn't use any on this. We've used none of the main tanks here. And I have a little bit of extra rocket fuel here in case we have to refuel this guy while we're out there. So we've got goofy amounts of fuel up here on the ship. The only question is, of course, does this main ship with its attendant descent module, will it be able to get to Duna and back with fuel to spare? And the answer to that is yes, but it's especially yes because we still haven't burned off all the fuel on these guys. And we're definitely going to do that now. So, ordinarily, again, I'd probably use MechJeb to do a planet-to-planet transfer because, well, I haven't demonstrated I can do that manually yet in my career mode. But couple of things about that. One, I've shown I can do it for the moon, and doing it to another planet really isn't all that different. But I will do it. In the career mode, I will do that completely manually. Actually, I could probably do that here. Why don't I do that here? The reason I don't do that here is because there is something that is in the stock game now to help this out that didn't used to be there until, again, depending how you measure, relatively recently. And that's this maneuver calculator that you can use once you've got enough skill in the career mode. XP levels, whatever you want to call it in your pilots. And so you could argue that me using MechJeb to do it really isn't any different. And it really isn't. MechJeb's a little bit more advanced, but the idea is basically the same. All you need is a fairly stable circular orbit. And you can then tell it to tell you when the maneuver is up and coming. I love that. That's great. That's a great feature to allow it to be easier for Kerbal Space Program players, especially new ones, to be able to get to distant places without having to fiddle with the maneuver nodes, provided they've done at least some of it manually enough to get all the XP that they need in order to get their characters to be able to do that sort of thing. Where am I going with this? But I can't use MechJeb for that anyway because its maneuver mechanism is kind of broken at the moment until they update MechJeb. So what do I want to do here? This is a circular orbit that I could do this from, but I want to burn off and take advantage of some of the extra fuel that I've got in these stages that are throwaway anyway. So I'm going to do something. I'm going to use these to get myself further away from Kerbin, but not in interplanetary space, which means I'll use slightly less fuel to get out of the system because it won't take as much to get out of the orbit of Kerbin. But I'm also going to do it in a way that doesn't leave space junk everywhere. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to expand my orbit way out here until I'm not only past Moon, but past Minmus by at least some amount. But I don't want to intercept Minmus, and I'm not really going to do any sort of weird gravity boosty thing because I'm not in a position of saving the fuel I've got. I don't need to do that. I want to make sure that I can't accidentally intercept Minmus. That should do. You see that I'm coming in under its tilted plane. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the extra fuel I have to get up there if I can. And then I'm going to ditch the boosters back on intercept with Kerbin so they just crash land basically, so no space junk. And because I can't land them, I don't have enough smarts on board those boosters. And then I'm going to circularize the orbit up here. So do I have enough fuel? I have 14,000 and 7,700 meters per second delta V on that on the engine that I have, I think. So we're going to save it here in case I screw this up. So I only want to use the fuel that I have available in those boosters. And so what that means is let's get myself oriented correctly, advance physics really, really fast. There we go. We're settling in on the maneuver node. We advance time until we get to the right point in our cycle. One of the other reasons to get further away from Kerbin is you can't accelerate time very fast in non-physics mode when you're really, really close to a planet. Even though theoretically you could do 10,000 or 100,000, whatever warp at any point when you're not under thrust or under atmospheric deceleration or any of that kind of thing. The game literally doesn't let you when you're really, really close to a planet. And because my leaving for Duna optimal point and departing for Duna is going to be a couple of years into the future, I can't really warp fast enough to get to that point in time when I'm really, really close to the planet. So we're going to get ourselves away from the planet before we try to do that. This isn't strictly necessary, but for the sake of expediency and time, in fact, I don't want to wait around 6 hours trying to orbit. Anyway, doesn't matter. Burn time is going to be 53 seconds. Splitting that, it's going to be 26 and a half seconds to split that burn time across the node. And so we are going to do that right now. And here we see our first design problem. By trying to do this burn at full thrust, the physics engine does not create a joint at the point of coupling that's strong enough to deal with our craft. Now, it doesn't snap it off, so we end up with this goofy, bendy situation going on. I don't know why they can't make that more rigid. It makes no sense to... I don't know. But in any case, this is one of the reasons why if you're doing high delta V, high thrust situations with coupling, you either want to tow it behind you or you want to do some sort of multiple coupling operation where you couple two of these at once, like in a side-to-side configuration or something, because this is just silly. But okay, mechanical structures, maybe it's just not, I don't know. In real life, I'd want to make this as rigid as possible. Once you do the attachment, bolt it down to within an inch of its life. Now, one way to mimic that now, which I've never tried to do, is to do in-space building on your craft. You can now add stuff and, I guess, remove stuff in space, so that you can augment or weld together craft or whatever without having to be in Space Command down in the VAB. You can do it out here. Never tried to do it. Not going to do it this time. Definitely have to learn that in career mode and experiment with it. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to thrust less obnoxiously. Like, it doesn't really matter how long it takes me to get up to the appropriate speed. Because this isn't an exact maneuver anyway. Ugh, it's really obnoxious that it's wobbling like that. Actually, the only real way to fix that is to let it settle down. Or cheat and use the time acceleration thing to stop some of the wobble a little bit. No, it's not actually letting me do that. It's being both clever and annoying. All right. Very irritating. Anyway. Not an exact maneuver anyway, as long as it's roughly in the plane. So let's just do a quarter speed burn here. It's going to do this goofy wobble thing. Whoa, 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 whoa. Physics acceleration bad. Physics acceleration made everything go very, very wonky in a hurry. Almost had to crack and eat me. Oh, well, that's just very bad. Yeah, can't do any physics warping at this point. It's just crazy town. Alright, let's try this again. I guess I just have to wait this one out. It's only 20 seconds anyway. Yeah. I may have to look up to, I don't know. I don't like using a lot of game-changing plugins when I'm doing my career mode because that just seems like cheating a little bit. But definitely in Sandbox mode, there's a quality of life thing here where what I would do is I would find a mod that made docking like this into way more rigid joints. I think I wouldn't have a problem with that. I don't mind that there's soft connections when your only purpose in doing a dock is to transfer passengers and fuel and the like. Because that seems like something you could probably do. It doesn't need to be a rigid dock, but when you're using these docking nodes as a way to try to hard couple ships, it seems silly to have to go out there and weld like support struts to just get it to not do this. And docking pairs of these things at once means they have to be very meticulously aligned. I haven't done it in forever. Geez, the last time I did that was when I built a really, really big craft where I had to actually do a docking mechanism so that these things like these side boosters... Alright, hang on. We gotta check where we are here. The side boosters are something... Oh, that's not... Oh, I overshot. You can actually see that. My intended apoapsis was here, and instead I'm actually leaving Kerbal, and that's actually bad for us. So what I want to do is I actually want to use some of my fuel to go retrograde to slow this down. I don't want to leave orbit now. I want to leave it in like 2 years or so when we've got a good alignment on when Duna's nearby. So instead what I have to do is I have to reorient my craft. Actually undo some of that burn. But that's alright, I got fuel to burn. That's not the biggest deal in the world. Was not paying attention. That was foolish. Alright. Bring up the thrust a bit. You can see this starting to peel in a little bit. Hopefully I don't have to burn too much fuel doing this. And there we go. We're going to do it right about there is good. Alright, no, we're in good shape. So I'm going to save the game there. I'm going to get out to apoapsis. So add a maneuver out here. Get it pretty close to the actual apoapsis. It doesn't have to be perfect. And expand this out until we have a circular orbit. Actually, I don't want to do that. I lied. What I want to do is I'm going to want to shrink my periapsis until it actually intersects with the planet, which won't take much. It'll take but a minuscule amount of fuel. So that I don't leave space debris lying around, because that's obnoxious. We have a serious problem with that around Earth. Go on to a lot of websites, specifically a few good NASA and amateur websites. Anyway, it doesn't matter. My point being, space junk. Go look up space junk. You look up space junk orbiting. It's at least one website I remember which literally showed tens of thousands of pieces of crap orbiting the planet in various different ways. I think more or less in real time. Stuff we've had to track so we literally don't smack into it. Alright. So we're going to use the mains themselves to deorbit the mains. That does technically mean that very temporarily we're deorbiting ourselves because they don't have independent control on them. So that we have to do this while we're still attached to the control part of the craft. Now this is slightly risky, so we're going to retract the solar panels while we do this so we don't accidentally snap them off. And the reason why will become apparent in a second. Alright, here we go. Just need to do enough of a burn. Don't have to be very, very specific about when we do it, but let's do this proper. Well, here we go. There we go. Blah, 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 blah. We're burning off all of this speed. And now, in principle, the periapsis for this entire ship is inside Kerbal. That's a problem, because that means that if we actually got anywhere close to the planet, we'd all be dead. However, we're only going to have this happen to the boosters, which have quite a bit of fuel left in them, which we can't do anything with, because we can't take it with us. We don't have any room. So we're going to get spinning. Actually put... There we go. Alright. Now, because of our merging of the ships, our staging has gotten broken. So what we want to really do is we want to get the decouplers, specifically the 6 decouplers that are relevant to... Let's just make sure we get the right decouplers. We only have the 6 left, though. Let's put that in a stage of their own so we don't have to do this manually. So here we go. We are rotating, which means that when we stage through this, they will peel away from the ship more or less symmetrically as we rotate under it. Now we can slow down our own rotation, but that means that we are still kind of screwed in the sense that we're going to impact. We're still going to impact Kerbal. That hasn't. We're in the center, and so our orbit probably hasn't changed very much. These guys have pushed away from us a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that they're all destined for the junkyard too, because I don't think that's changed the orbits of most of our stuff much at all. They're all going to head straight into the planet eventually. But now we can do... Okay, so we just get rid of that maneuver node. We can set up a maneuver node that circularizes our orbit, which will save our lives, which is nice. Uh, 67,379, 67,918. So let's do a little bit of fiddling here. 7050. That's pretty close. Sixty-six, 771, 67. Spending too much time fiddling with these notes. Does it really matter that it's not perfectly circular? Probably not. The reason to try to get it more or less circular and flat with the plane would be to make the next calculation stage a little bit easier, which it's going to do for me, but it doesn't do all that well when it's not circular. But let's try this anyway. Here we go. We want to line up with the maneuver. I'm not going to use physics acceleration because we still got... I might be able to get away with a little bit. Oh, alright, we're doing okay here. Get ourselves aligned. Now, we actually want to activate these engines. And we can arguably get rid of this one because that's for the other craft. What's happened here? Oh, I see. I really wish these subscripts, because right now it says this is 1, 2, but these subscripts should be restricted to meaning how many of them are in the group, so I don't like this labeling. I don't know if that's a mistake or design choice, but in any case, those should now have been active. We have a big long burn though, and we need to be, so the burn time is 7 minutes 14. Alright, so let's accelerate to use the built-in warping to get to the right node. Right, closer to the node. And it stopped it, and we need to be at 3 minutes and 45 seconds, roughly. So let's accelerate time a little bit more to get there. Alright, so this should do... Oh, that... Why did that get turned on? Shut down that engine, please. There we go. Hopefully we didn't lose too much fuel doing that. Just a tiny little bit, that was... And we got spare, so that's fine. I guess that accidentally got turned on because I did something stagey, and anyway, it doesn't matter. I turned it off again. That's why we wanted it turned off, so that it didn't, push us in the other direction. This is not a fast burn. Let's use an alarm clock. We're not using MechJeb anymore, so bye-bye MechJeb. Let's use an alarm clock here. Create an alarm. We have to burn for another 3 minutes and 13 seconds, so... sorry, no, the burn time is 6 minutes and 54, so 6 minutes and 45. We want it to pause when it gets there, add the alarm. We don't want to warp to the next one because then it'll probably turn off the engines. What we do want to do is just let that run. But now we're pushing with a very weak thruster, and an efficient one, but a weak one. And so we're not going to likely have any problems with physics warping, so we're going to take it all the way up to 4 times warp, but we now have an alarm on it so that we don't accidentally overburn. Where will this mission end? This mission will end when we're back in Kerbal orbit. I think that's where I'm going to call it. I've done, I think, the difficult bits. I have to do one more... The longest thing that it's going to take me to do at this point, aside from these burns, which really don't take that long. Because a lot of it's going to be physics acceleration. For the burns, a lot of it's going to be... the big, long burn or wait to get to... I guess I kind of got to spend some time getting to Duna. No, I think the hard bit has been done. We'll see. I may split this up into 2 sections. I'll have to see. I'll have to see where I get to today. I'm already at the 2-hour mark for this. This has not been a short demonstration. Of course, I've been babbling a lot. Alright, so hopefully this timer will kick in. I do like the fact that they added manual timers, so you can just literally have it run until you trigger some activity. In this case, the most useful thing to me is to warp to that point in time. And the other one is what I'm using now, which is do standard game operations until that point of time and then pause the game, which it has just done. Delete and close, but then immediately watch the engines, because I'm going to have to turn them off. And turn it off. Now, we should be in a big honking circular orbit. And we got Moon and Minmus on an inner orbit. We are as far out as we can probably get from Kerbal realistically without leaving the system. The reason I don't want to leave the system is because of the very next thing that I'm going to do, which is going to be to use this, which is something they've added again relatively recently, which takes over some of the job of MechJeb's planning for orbital transfers. It's a little bit simpler than the one that MechJeb has, but it's really effective because from here I can just say, take me to Duna. It spends a little time doing a calculation and then gives me the next maneuver specifically, I guess, that minimizes delta V. It doesn't give you any, I don't think it gives you many options, but it does make it really helpful. Now, I haven't used all the features here, so what do we have here? Various time properties. I think we can add... these are just different ways of viewing it. So this is at year 1, etc., etc., etc. This says that it's going to take 242 days to get to the right point in the relative orbits of Kerbal and Duna in order to make this burn. And this is the amount of delta V, so we can actually see ahead of time. I can get it to create an alarm as to when that happens, which is exactly what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to use the other feature of alarms, which is just to say warp next, except I'm going to To save us a little time, I'm going to adjust to point in the intended eventual maneuver direction. Now, this isn't just like it looks like one orbit ahead of time. This is actually going to take hundreds of orbits, 200 and like thousands and thousands of orbits to get to of Kerbin in order to be able to get to where we want to be here. It's literally 226 days. And in our orbit, the period is 86 days, so thousands of orbits is a lie. It's actually going to take 276 days divided by 86, which is about... Is it only 3? Not sure if I buy that. Let's find out. Warp to the next orbit. Go. So here it is at 100,000 standard time, warping I think as fast as the game will allow. And you can see our orbit around Kerbin is incredibly long. And so it should take, actually I was more or less right, about I think 3 orbits. To actually get to when the maneuver node happens to be. Love this tool. It's a good tool. I'm glad they brought something like that in to give a little bit of extra help just to do big orbit stuff. Or sorry, big transfer stuff to users. It doesn't have to be super advanced. It works best, in fact, almost doesn't work at all if you don't have the property of a nice circular orbit that's nicely planar. Or at least circular. All right. We have to do a 21-minute burn. Maneuver alarm for the following simple transfer. So delete and close. So here we go. We have to, so we want to, it has to be at 11 minutes, what is that? 11 minutes and 45 seconds, so very close to now, actually. And in fact, I'm glad I set the maneuver up ahead of time. So let's just launch that, because that's pretty close to splitting over the halfway mark. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the alarm and set up another one of those. So alarms, create the alarm. So we have to burn for 21 minutes and 28 seconds. So let's just go to 21 minutes and 15 seconds. We're going to want to pause it when we get there, add the alarm. And now our alarm is set up, and we want to make sure that this is going to end earlier than this. And it looks like that's the case, but not by much. In fact, I'm a little nervous about that, if I'm honest. So let's create another alarm, actually. So try to get a little bit ahead of it. So 20 and 40 seconds. Same thing, pause, add the alarm, and get rid of the old one. 2041. Give myself more leeway. 20 minutes even. Add the alarm. There we go. 1956. That'll do. All right. Now that I got my alarm... Oh, actually, did I... oh, darn. I bet you I didn't hit the pause option on that, did I? One more time. This time with feeling. Set the pause first. All right, so what do we got here? 20 minutes. So we're going to do 19 minutes and 45 seconds, giving us about a 15-second window. Now I'm happy with it. Now I'm not going to do warp next because I want to keep thrusting while I'm doing this, so I'm going to accelerate time by factor of 4, which means it's still going to take 5 minutes of high physics burn for this to finish. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that burn, and I'm going to go AFK for just a second to grab myself a little bit more beverage. And I will be back before that burn finishes. Back in a moment. I should point out, of course, before I go get my beverage, that it doesn't actually matter if I get back before the burn finishes, because it will pause, but hopefully before that burn finishes. Yeah, that's the utility of alarms, right? And I'm back. Hey, hopefully nobody got bored while I was stepped away from the keyboard. We are still coming in on our burn time. We have a few minutes left to go in real time. Now, when I used to do Duna runs much earlier on in KSP, this really wouldn't have been practical before maneuver nodes. It would have been really hard before maneuver nodes, if I'm honest. I did do it a couple of times, I think before maneuver nodes, but after Duna existed. And the way I did it was I would basically experiment with my orbit until I found an intersection point, because I think, if I recall back in time far enough, you could still identify intercepts when your path crossed the other the target. And since everything is largely in a plane anyway, as long as you stayed in the plane, you could basically make piles and piles of orbits until you finally found an intercept. Like you could set up your orbit to intersect the other orbit, but the other target, the planet like Duna, might not have been there when you finally got there. So you could just accelerate time, and you went around and around and around until you found the right spot at which your orbit hitting its orbit coincided. And that worked out okay, but it was kind of wasteful. And there are people who could have done the math. I was lazy. I just never. That was just beyond what I wanted to do for a game for me. But the minute maneuver nodes came in, of course, that became a little easier, because you could. You could effectively sort of experiment without actually doing any of the actual rocketry part of it. Hang on, I gotta pay attention to this now. But what I would often do is I wouldn't sit around, because I really didn't have the option to do it. I wouldn't sit around orbiting Kerbal until the right time, and then leave, and then do a direct, like, sort of an intercept like I'm doing now. What I would do, actually, is I would leave Kerbal altogether and orbit the sun, and then circularize that, and make sure, and then do the appropriate node manipulations until I found a good intercept point. Because it was just easier. And, floating around orbiting Kerbal and floating around, say, just behind Kerbal at roughly the same distance from the sun really doesn't change much about what we're about to do. So we're definitely now leaving Kerbal, though. All right. So this might not get us a really good intercept, but it's going to get kind of close. So let's go take a look. Now, to do this, we get rid of the maneuver node. To do this, what we can do is we are going to effectively intercept it here, right? This is the point of closest. The point of closest approach is going to be over here, and we're going to be doing it at 41 million meters, or 41 kilometers. Is that really it? No, that can't be right. Actually, 41 kilometers. No, 41,000 kilometers. Gee, I can't even. The heck am I doing? 41 million meters, 41,000 kilometers. Metric system, yay, which I should be used to. But where Duna is now is actually here. So let's focus. First of all, let's set that as our target, because we want to know that. But let's actually zoom in on Duna. Focus view. And you can see that on the real planet, you can see a shadow of where our orbit will eventually cross Duna's path relative to Duna. Now, this isn't really in fixed space where the path is going to be. This is going to actually happen way the heck over at apoapsis, way the heck over here at the intercept point. But the useful thing is to see on the real Duno sort of roughly where your path is going to sort of come in and then leave. Right? That's quite a ways away. Like, that's really, really far away. That's nowhere near any of the planets. So we have to do a sort of a refinement burn at some point. Point of order. If I go into here, can I see that same path at the point of intercept? See if I can do this. It's a little hard to get the, because it's not a real place. So that's a Duna encounter, but I don't know how much other information we're going to get about that point in space. In any case, like, I don't think I can select this and go there. Can I focus on this? No. I can add a maneuver and I can warp there, but I can't, I don't think I can focus the view here. Yeah, I can't. But I can focus the view on the real planet. And we can see where we can see relative to the planet where our orbit will actually pass by. And the reason I'm mentioning this is going to help us refine the orbit. So what we're going to do is, I find it easiest to do the refinement sort of partway along the orbit, and in the case of one where the orbit is getting bigger, a little bit ahead of the sun. So I'm going to add a maneuver, say about here-ish. And instead of trying to adjust it on here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust it down here. I'm going to go into Approach Info for Duna, Graphical Maneuver Editor, and make this as slow an adjustment as possible, because little tiny differences are going to have a major impact on how this periapsis behaves. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this closer towards the planet by making the appropriate adjustments. So let's figure out what this means here. What this means here is that, so clearly they're not in the same plane, so that's one problem. And clearly this periapsis is not sort of close to the planet, along, like, in the plane. So we're going to do two adjustments. One of them is to tilt this up a little bit. And to do that, we're going to, now if we do an up and a down movement here, what that's going to do is it's going to pivot the entire plane of our orbit as if there were sort of a pin, kind of like as if there was a pin driven across our orbit here. Just as if we're doing like a pitch adjustment on our orbit when orbiting a planet. We just happen to be orbiting a much bigger system right now. We're orbiting the whole sun. So this is the same sort of thing. And if we do it, if we did it back where our ship is, then we would pivot along sort of a line here, right? Which we don't want to do. We actually want to pivot it because the eventual intercept point is out here. We don't want to do the pivot in a line that actually is really, really close to where we're doing the intercept. We want to do a pivot as sort of distant from either end of this burn as possible, because we want to actually tilt this. We want to tilt this end up or down, right? So that's why we're doing the burn here. Also, a little easier to do the burn when you're a little closer. So, but part of the reason for that is the tilt. So watch what happens when, so I'm looking at this, I'm looking at our planet, and I'm looking at the way we're passing by, and I want to raise this so that it's in this plane like this. Now I'm going to tilt it like up a little bit so that I'm not staring directly into the sun. But effectively, that's the plane. You can see almost everything in the system is nicely along this plane, and we want to get this up to here. So actually, let's just leave it here, and we're going to get this up to this line. I'm going to do that by adjusting this. You see, I can raise it up, and bang. Now, I may have to adjust that again as we adjust other orbital parameters, but now we are passing by Duna very close to being in the plane of the planet. Because now we're going to adjust our sort of forward speed, which is going to have us cut in time and space closer, and so we're going to do a top-down view for this. Now we can ignore the real one now. We're only going to look at the one we're adjusting, and so we're going to adjust this. And if we speed up, we can see we're getting closer. And as you can see now, as we get much closer, we're actually inside the orbit of the outermost moon. But we're going to get even closer than this. We're going to get really super close. Now this is really tricky to do because it's pretty fast. But all right, so now we are within 400 kilometers. We're going to get even closer, but how far are we vertically? Now you can see that we didn't quite get our plane matched, and now as we're closer, it actually matters a lot. So we're going to raise this up a little bit. And more. That's not bad. We are now at 229 because in the act of raising it up, we got it closer to the equator of the planet, 229 kilometers. I'm going to adjust this forward. Oh, geez, too fast. This is really tricky because micro adjustments here matter a lot. Now I could probably enter, I might be able to enter this by text maybe, but I don't know. I'm not going to. I'm just going to fiddle with this a little bit until 146 isn't bad. 83 is above the atmosphere. So we have actually planned a maneuver node which gets us roughly in the plane, pretty close in the plane. Especially important, we're very close to the equator of the planet as we're passing by it. We're not coming down or up at a very sharp angle. I'm not trying to do a polar landing. Ooh, do we want to do a polar landing? Yeah, let's make this exciting. Let's do this a little, like, there's lots to, I mean, it's really cool to land at the equator too because there's lots of neat craters and the like, but I haven't done a polar landing in a while. Ooh, let's try that. So I'm actually going to lower this a bit. So we're coming in a bit sharpish on the bottom of the planet, and we're going to tighten it up a little bit so we're coming in a little closer. How much can we adjust this? Might be able to get even closer to a polar orbit. Might not. I don't know. I don't know if we can get right under the pole. I don't think the orbital mechanic. Oh, we might be able to. Can we do this? That's pretty close. That's too far. Too far into the planet though. Although that's pretty close to the deorbit height we want to be above the surface. That's way too close. Okay. 38 kilometers. I'm going to do it so that I'm... Actually, check that out. We can see the polar caps. I wonder if it would be nice to land somewhere near the boundary, and I don't want to be burning fuel with the lander to cause that. So maybe we can cut this a little finer. Let's actually go back up. Oop, that was too far. That was way too far. It's going to take some finagling. That's not bad. Check that out. Looking straight down on it, when we pass by here, that edge of the ice surface here is going to be really close. Unfortunately, part of this is in the dark, so I can't quite tell. But I think that might be enough. All right. So anyway, that's how you can use that corrective burn partway along to go from a nearly planar close approach to an even closer approach, but then being able to adjust the parameters so that you come in with the right timing to skid to get to nearly any kind of established orbit. That's kind of nice. This wasn't accidental. I actually did this on purpose. So let's just double check. That's got to be pretty close, right? I think it's just cutting. I'm guessing it's cutting in a little finer. Can I tweak this slightly? That's coming in quite high, though. Okay. $172. Oh, you gotta make such little tiny adjustments to make this work. 86. Too far, way too far. Whoa, come on, come on. 76. Oh, I could be messing with this forever. Anyway, I can't do it any more micro tweaky than that. And I'm going to have to adjust it anyway when I get really, really close, because I'm not going to be able to do this burn perfectly anyway. So I'm picking nits at this point. Let's actually do this burn. You can see actually it takes only 7.6 meters per second adjustment this far away from the target. A tiny little change in the angle of approach way the heck out here before we ever get anywhere near Duna, in order to make these changes. So we're going from this approach out here to this tight polar approach here. Let's do this thing. So first of all, save that so that everything's locked in. Now we got to accelerate 95 days into the orbit. So you can see me and Kerbal. Well, I'm leaving Kerbal now, but me and a whole bunch of asteroids. And now we're close. Now I need 8 seconds across this burn, but I'm gonna, yeah, okay. 8 seconds is fine. I can do that as a full strength burn. Whew. Exciting for me. All right, 7.5 seconds, 8 seconds. Oh God. Oh, I've made a terrible mistake. I am not pointed at the right maneuver node. So I'm going to abort this, and I'm going to do another one. I was not actually pointed at the maneuver node. But that's fine. Because this is all corrective stuff anyway. Let's just do, we have to do this all over again, unfortunately, but that's fine. That was just stupidity on my part. Let's get all of these. Let's get the plane lined up again. Let's do this quickly. We're going to make that. Why didn't somebody warn me? A bit higher, so that's in the plane. And then I'm going to slow down and get it close. So that's when it's starting to bend in towards the planet. Let's go faster. Oh, too far. Let's go faster. No, stop the fast. Let's... No, that went too far again. Let's see if we can get that nice polar orbit thing happening again. That is coming in at 384,000. That's too far away, so let's make some... That is coming right into the planet, and so that's less good than it could be. How's that? 166. A little too far away from... Let's try that. 121, and that's... I think that's quite clearly crossing the edge of the ice sheet. So let's call that one good, but this time let's actually point in the direction of the maneuver. Little physics acceleration to get us in line. We're now lined up. We're going to hit F5 to lock that in. That's nice. We're now at the 3-hour mark to do the fixed burn to correct for the screw up of the last one. Coming in, you're going to have to do about another 6-second burn to make this one work. A little bit more warping. Come on. Oh, no! Whoa. Just about screwed that up badly. All right. 5-second burn. Here we go. Stop it a little early. And then we're going to sort of approach this very, very finely and watch this come in, because this is actually a better indication of any time-based options. In fact, I'm going to get rid of the maneuver node entirely and just watch this. So we're literally adjusting this approach by thrusting in a direction, thrusting at a location nowhere near this planet. We're going to get to about, I don't know, 50. A little bit higher than that. Say 80. That is a really nice approach. So we used the maneuver node to do most of the heavy lifting on that, but when we got really, really close, we just turned it off and watched the actual real-time periapsis. Now, what this means is, because everything's basically on rails when we're not applying thrust, we will end up here. In fact, not only is that true, but we can literally click somewhere out here and say, when we get to this point in our orbit, that's where we want to be next. Warp to that location. And now you can see, let's actually retarget our ship. You can actually see this is where we are now. Oh, and hey, look at that. We've got a laser communication back home. That's what that line means. I love that. Because we put that dish on our craft. Something I didn't have on there before, so. Yay, fixing design flaws. So you can see we're approaching Duna pretty close here. We're actually going outside its orbit briefly. And then we're coming back in and intercepting in a way that leaves us coming in under the pole. All right, this is pretty good. All right, next thing we got to do, we got to arrive at Duna. Now, how we're going to do this is we're not going to, we don't have very strong thrusters, and we're coming in really, really hot, like really fast. But Duna does have an atmosphere, so we're going to do some atmospheric braking. And all we have to do is do enough atmospheric braking that we make it so that we don't escape Duna. After that, we can either use engines or more atmospheric braking. But this initial burn, if we wanted to do this by way of a burn, we could have come at an approach on this planet way further away from the planet, so that we had a lot more time in orbit. Actually, that wouldn't have really made any difference because we would just head in and out too quick. We have to slow down fast enough so that we have to decelerate ambitiously enough that we don't leave the system, and we have a heck of a clip going because we're approaching from the outside, so from quite far away. So rather than try to do that with our engines, which we could probably do, we're going to try to use aero braking to do this. Now, we're going to do this trick again where we use a maneuver node we can use it for most of the work here, but I think we want to get down to 22 and a half. I think I've had good luck with that as an arrival speed. Something like that. All right. But we're going to do micro adjustments manually. Now, realistically, the primary reason to do this is get the direction that we're after. Oh, actually, point of order. Did we ever re-extend our solar panels? No. So, and actually, we don't want to necessarily do that now, but I want to make sure we have enough power. Oh, we got goofy amounts of power. We've had batteries. We've got batteries for months. There's a lot about a sim that doesn't make a lot of sense, and one of the things is when you do high-speed warp, it actually turns off the decay of things like batteries and the like. I guess it's under the assumption, I mean, you could excuse it under the assumption that during those years that we've been out here, we actually open the solar panels and then just shut them again for this approach. It doesn't really change the game all that much, but it would have been nice if they came up with a way to say, lock in the rate of power usage versus power generation and found a way to, I don't know. It would have been finding ways to make it more realistic without having to run everything step by step in real time is a pain in the butt. I can understand why they didn't do it. Anyway, let's we're aligned, so use this maneuver node, but mostly this is to fiddle with the vector so that we arrive tighter to the planet. A couple of ways to do that. You could decelerate backwards in order to tighten it in, to tighten our approach. I chose to go sideways so that I think that used less fuel for me than trying to come in tighter by going backwards. Because I'm kind of saying I'm going to just nudge it a few degrees off course sideways, but I'm not going to try to bleed off any of the speed to do it because that takes more effort. I'm going to use the atmosphere to do that work for me. Fiddle with it. I wanted to make sure not to accidentally screw up the direction, but anyway. Problem with going sideways is it doesn't bleed any of the speed off, so. Alright, here we go. This means about 6.5, so here we go. Stop this a little bit early. At this point, this isn't needing to be exact, and then we're just going to follow this descent manually. That might be a little close. But we're going to save it here because we can always undo that with a little extra thrust. We have goofy amounts of fuel for these engines, but the engines just aren't very powerful, and we're only going to be in this system for not long at these speeds. Specifically, I mean, I guess realistically, if I'm in this system for 2 days, I'm going to be burning for way less time than that in order to circularize the orbit. So I could have done this with the engines alone. But aerobraking is fun. So let's try that. Whoa. Spit up really, really fast. All right. So we're approaching. We want to go into retrograde. Not so much for the burn this time, but just to get us so that the back end of the ship is pointing towards the ground, towards the atmosphere. Accelerate. Can we do the physics acceleration, please? Yes, thanks. Just for time reasons. There we go. Now, non-physics time warp to get us much closer to the planet. Here we go. Let's hope we don't break anything off. Physics accelerate until we're down into more of the atmosphere. Now, Duna has a very thin atmosphere. And what that means is, in order for it to be thick enough for air resistance to matter, you got to get quite a ways down into it. But it thickens up pretty quick, too. So the difference between 22.5 kilometers above and 20 kilometers above can make a pretty big difference in whether or not your ship explodes and whether or not you can get enough deceleration to actually make this maneuver matter. You're also coming in situations like this a lot faster than just parachuting down or descending from orbit. You're coming in from a very wide... Coming in from... yeah, there we go. Kind of broken off by aero forces. That's unfortunate. All right, you know what? I'm going to live with that, which means that when I get back, one of my missions, I'm going to see if I can actually do a repair. I should have retracted it. I think I can retract it to prevent that from happening. Now you can see that my periapsis, I'm approaching periapsis. How's my actual orbit doing? Is it closing up fast enough? I may have to do this again anyway. This has to become elliptical from hyperbolic before I run out of, you know what? Do I want to try to save my antenna? What are my options here? Yes, let's do a couple of things. I want to come in a little bit tighter. So let's do a couple of things here. Let's I'm going to adjust the orientation of this back at KSP to have it deploy in a way that looks more aesthetic. But that's fine. Let's see if that does a better job. In any case, if it breaks off this time, I'm not going to be too terribly concerned. But let's... 21.5. All right, let's try this thing. Let's warp down into pretty close orbit. Let's go retrograde when we get there. Physics acceleration to help us do the rotation. Remember, we're rotating without the advantage of RCS because I want to preserve RCS fuel for when I really, really need it. Which means I'm doing that all with flywheels, but I don't have flywheels that are that big. So it takes a little while. All right, let's get down a little closer, but let's give it a few seconds here to try to reorient again to face backwards. And now we're going in a little further. Now we're in the atmosphere proper. Now we're entering the atmosphere. Let's check our orbit. Still extremely hyperbolic, but it's coming in. Nothing's broken off just yet. Let's come in and take a look at closing in on... We're closing in on periapsis. So we're still harder and harder deceleration. We really do need this to come in hard, though. Come on. Come on. Close the loop. On, close the loop. We're doing okay. No, I don't have ablative shielding on these surfaces, and the reason being is I didn't want to add mass to this thing, but it does come at a disadvantage. What I really should do is put quite a wide base around this that shadows the entire craft, so that all the heavy lifting is done by the main module. So that's going to be a redesign for the next version of this ferry. I want it to protect everything that it's carrying, and right now it's just not. How are we doing? Have we closed the gap? Because we're kind of running out of... Oh, it's getting there. Is it going to close it before we run out of atmosphere? I don't think it is, but we have bled off a lot. Now I could keep trying this and lowering my interaction. Yeah, it's not going to close it. I'm just going to turn on the engines, because I don't want to have to make another pass. And actually, while I'm doing this, I'm just going to shrink this all the way, because I burned off a lot of our entry speed without having to use the engines, but I got so much fuel. This ferry is totally over-designed for just being able to reach Duna and get home. So that's fine. Now, if I really wanted to make this super fuel efficient, if I were in a situation where I didn't have these stupid efficient nuclear engines, I would arrive here. I'd do a deceleration aerobrake burn that captured me in Duna's orbit. And then I would keep using the atmosphere to... I'm actually going to turn on physics acceleration at this point. I would keep using the atmosphere in order to close the apoapsis pretty much all the way down to the planet, using almost no fuel except what it took to sort of adjust my interaction with the atmosphere, which takes almost nothing, and you can basically get yourself into orbit around Duna for free once you actually get like an intercept with the planet at about 21.5 to 21 kilometers above the surface, depending on how heavy your craft is, really. Oh, we do have the problem that we got a little bit of wobble going on, partially because of the atmosphere and partially because, well, doesn't matter. Point being, a little bit of wobble because it's not pushing straight on the craft. We did pretty good. But the periapsis, because of our thrusting, we've actually lowered both our periapsis and our apoapsis because we've done so not at periapsis. And so we have to go and raise that. So we're going to just warp up to here. Get out of physics warp, and we're going to warp up to here. We're going to raise that up again, and we just won't worry about using the atmosphere. We got goofy amounts of fuel. We took the brunt of our arrival speed out of the equation by using the atmosphere. We don't have to fiddle with it much anymore. So we're going to go prograde. Come on. That's enough. And now we're going to raise this up above the atmosphere to about, I think 55 is above the atmosphere. And then as we arrive there, we're just going to start circularizing our orbit. That should do. I'm okay with that. Now, are we in a good position relative to the ice cap? Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. Look at that. That will skim the edge of it, which means that either with a manual landing, which I won't try here because time constraints, I'll use MechJeb to help me out here. I should be able to land actually more or less right at the boundary between these two layers, which should be quite a nice picture. So that works okay. But I'm gonna add a maneuver here. I'm going to then figure out what it will take to circularize this. It means bringing down the apoapsis to 55. Refocus on Duna here to make this a little easier. Duna apoapsis down to right about there, except I'm not actually at periapsis, am I? So let's... Actually, I'm pretty close. 56 versus 54. Yeah, that's good enough. Good enough. We'll recircularize once we got that sorted out. That's going to be a 7-minute burn time. So let's warp to roughly where that's supposed to be. Unfortunately, yeah, so 7-minute burn time, so 3 minutes and change. So let's just accelerate in time a little bit further. So that's 3 minutes and, 3 minutes and like 55 seconds. And unfortunately, I'm nowhere near the maneuver node because I'm an idiot. Oh well, I'll have to do this in pieces. So probably won't be able to do this right, but let's all right, time for another alarm. So we have to do a 7-minute and 40-second burn. So let's actually create an alarm for 7 minutes because I may want to stop early because I started late. So pause it when I get there, add an alarm please, then turn on physics warp so that we are burning that whole time. Still wobbling? Yeah, not much. Not enough to matter. It is currently 5:27 p.m. my time. I'm going to have to order food at some point because I do not have anything I really want to eat around the house. So now we're getting some oscillations coming in because of the physics warp. Wobble settled down a little bit. Let's boost the physics back up a little bit. Gotta keep an eye on our periapsis a bit. Because we did a burn that was a fairly long period of time, we started well before periapsis and are finishing off well after periapsis. All that thrusting along the along our orbital vector has the effect of lowering that a hair, which you can actually see here, right? Not by a lot. So we're going to delete and close, and we are going to stop. Come on, we're going to stop this and cancel the warp node, and then we're going to add another maneuver at periapsis, and we need to get down from 98. So let's finish this off and circularize this really, really nicely. 54 versus 53 and change. You know, I'm just screwing with this a little bit, trying to get it ever more circular, but this is probably a bit of a fool's game. See if we can get this nice and close. This is just me screwing around still, right? Trying to see if I can get it ever closer. But the problem is the parameters that I'm fiddling with here interact with each other in a way that is a little hard to get a perfect feel for. That is realistically close enough. I don't need to worry about much more than this. So let's do a 4.8 meter per second burn at the appropriate time. Go for it. Make sure we're on maneuver node when we come out of it. Anyway, the reason why I'm getting this all the way down to the surface is mostly because it is so that the engines on the deorbiter on the lander have less work to do to get all the way down to the surface. All right, here we go. Need to be just a little bit further ahead in time. Oh, now we want to be at 23 and a half seconds. Right about here. Go. This will be enough. $53,938, $54,626. That is about as close as we're realistically going to get without me spending way too much time fettling. We're in orbit. We are in orbit. So now we are going to try to do a landing right on the boundary between it's going to be tough actually, because the place where I want to land I have to assume is right beneath me, but I'm not actually going to be able to see it until sunlight gets there. That's a bit of a pain in the neck because I can't just arbitrarily light up the planet for everybody. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to wait until sufficiently far in the future that the other side of the planet is aiming on the sun. And what that means is we have to go basically about a dune a year into the future in order to be able to see that. Actually, no, that's a lie. We just do it at this pole. Hi, I'm an idiot. But that's okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we are going to decouple, and we're gonna get the right people into the lunar module that we want going with us. And we're not taking we're taking a mix of characters, and the rest are going to stay up here. We can only take down 3 at a time, remember. And we don't really have enough fuel. We could probably do a couple of up and down descents with the extra rocket fuel we have on board, but we're only going to do this once. So what we're going to do is from this capsule, we're going to transfer. We're going to do a crew transfer crew. We are going to take Rainbow Dash and Twilight Sparkle, but we're going to leave Pinkie Pie up here. She's the engineer. She can help keep things working up here, and frankly, she's a little too energetic to have her screwing around in the descent module. So it's not what I wanted to do. Thank you. So here we go. Nope, come on. Transfer crew. Pinkie Pie is going to transfer. I'm going to have to temporarily transfer, I think, to the cupola module because I don't think I have enough room in the crew module. We are going to bring transfer crew. We're going to bring Valentina Kerman down to the surface. So this is a joint operation. And we have we have on board here, we have two pilots. We technically have 2 pilots, which we don't technically need for this descent. We should have an engineer go down as well. So, you know what? Under the circumstances, Dash, you're going to be staying up here. Sorry. You're going to be staying up here. But what we're going to do is I'm going to put Pinkie Pie back on the mission list here. So transfer crew, transfer to this mission. So on board here, just to give you a list of who's on board, we're going to be taking Twilight as the engineer and Pinkie Pie. Twilight is the scientist and Pinkie Pie is the engineer. But Valentina Kerman is going down as our pilot. So we truly do have a joint mission all the way to the surface. But that is. At least slightly pony heavy, because this is Kerbal Space Ponies, and that's just the way we roll. Everyone else is going to stay up on board the station and keep things running, the station, mobile station, really, on board the ferry, keeping things working well up here. But let's, before we do everything, before we actually turn everybody loose, let's do a couple of things here. First of all, let's get the radar dish re-extended. Really should fix that up so it doesn't clip quite so badly there during extension. Second of all, let's get the here, I'm looking in the wrong place. Extend the solar panels so that we have power. Let's deploy the scanner. Let's make this look like it's a full mission. So we're not going to start object tracking or log observation data just yet. Actually, no. Let's. The Sentinel Infrared Telescope needs to be activated on a solar orbit. Okay, so that would be something we would use when we are out in solar space. That's fine. I've never used that that device actually, so that's totally reasonable. So we're going to deploy this scanner as well, the narrowband scanner. So now we have what looks like a fairly well-deployed sort of science endeavor here. That is our mobile platform up above, and we are now going to save the game, because things could go horribly wrong at this point. We are going to undock, and here we go. This is our... hang on, come on. Undock, please. I'm going to switch over to this craft. We're going to reactivate its engine, because remember, we disabled it. And we are starting to separate, and now what we should be able to do is we're going to use the RCS thrusters. I just want to get us a little bit further. Oops, that's not the one I wanted. I wanted that one. A little bit further away. And now we're slowly drifting apart. All right, girls, time to do the main mission. Ladies, please. All right, ladies, we're going to do the astronauts, Kerbonauts, Equinauts. Let's descend down to the surface. So we're not going to save until we do a proper landing, so we can redo this if we have to. But here's what we're going to do. We are now going to use MechJeb again, because one of the mechanisms that still works for the moment is to do the landing guidance, which we showed before back on Kerbin, but this time we're going to use a different mode. What we're going to do is we are going to set a target on the surface here. Where would be interesting? Some really nice craters in here, but this one's a little bit far away from the orbit, and I don't want to spend a lot of fuel. So we're going to land right here, actually. Now, can we... Okay, we need to pick a target on the map, click to set a target on the surface, so we're going to try to set it right here, which is really close to the orbital path anyway. Do I actually have to hit this? I don't think I do. No, it's already set the landing coordinates. That is not what I intended to have happen. I don't actually need to have that as a target. But the target coordinates on the map have been set. for the landing systems. Now, I could do this manually. I could probably set a burn here, and then I could descend down to here, and I could control the burn as I arrive and so on. But again, I'm going to do that in my career mode. I'm going to do a manual landing on Duna because it's really not that much harder than to do it on Moon. Easier, actually, because of the parachutes. But I'm going to use, for the sake of expediency, use the landing guidance system here, and I'm going to land at target. And I should be ready, and it should auto-deploy the chutes in the right order, so here we go. Now, I am allowing it to use RCS for fine adjustments, which means that as we get closer, it will use those in order to tweak the arrival to be more or less exactly where we state. So let's find out. This is exciting. Now you'll notice it's conservatively set the warping speed to only 3 units. I'm going to warp that a little faster because I can. And all it's doing is getting to the high deorbit burn point. Still manages to set the time warping appropriately. So here we go. We're getting into the right spot, and we're applying a burn. And basically, the first stage of this landing process is to just do a deorbit burn to get us moving at the appropriate speed. But now, with all due haste, it's making little micro adjustments in order to get the right landing coordinate. So it's going to continuously do this as long as it's just skimming the atmosphere, in order to try to decrease the error in arrival. I actually turn off RCS because it's doing a little bit of that oscillation thing. And it's going to burn a lot of RCS doing that. Yeah, monopropellant has come quite a ways down. When it's in full deceleration, I'll turn it back on. Continuing to meddle with course corrections here. So let's actually take a look at this. Where is it here? That is our prospective target, which is actually not where I told it to try to land. So it's trying to fiddle with the course correction to try to get that more accurate. It might be having problems because it's trying to predict its way through the atmosphere. And I'm coming in quite shallow. So doing this from a higher orbit may have been a better idea. So I do kind of want to land over the ice, to be perfectly honest. Having a lot of issues trying to figure out how to reduce that target difference. Oh, let's accelerate physics a little to try to force it to solve that problem faster. Having a bit more trouble than I might have expected. But you can see that the target difference reported by the landing guidance system is slowly decreasing. It's just not being particularly efficient with it, and I'm not sure why. But it is decreasing. I'll just let it do its thing. Coming in over the ice sheet. And now it's gone into a slightly braking, so braking target speed, status braking. So now it's doing another hard burn in order to help try to achieve the result. I was hoping it would use more of the atmosphere to do this, but I guess because it's coming in so shallow, it's decided it has to do an extra big thrust, but that's fine. We got a little bit of fuel to burn. Hopefully we'll be able to make the ascent, though. This is why I might have to do this again, actually. Because I was hoping to use more fuel... less fuel doing the landing and more fuel doing the... why is it taking so... Why is it using so much fuel doing this? Oh, look, they are connected. That's good. It's just got all three. Just shallow landing may have been a mistake. Time to land, because I don't really want to... I'd really rather just use the parachutes on the way down, right? Alright, so we are going to abort the auto land, because I think we're coming in a bit shallow for this. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it arrive in the atmosphere, because we're really quite a ways above at this point. I don't want to be thrusting all the way down, even a low amount of thrust. So we're going to get quite a ways down here. And we're going to say land somewhere. Do it. We've used a lot of fuel doing this. Now, before we actually complete this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to revert this because I'm really nervous about not having enough fuel to get back up. And I think that's because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the chutes so that they open it at a much higher altitude, provided it's safe to do so. And the minimum pressure is going to be quite a lot lower, I think. Now, this may hose me for various reasons, but I also have to make sure to do that on the drogue chutes. So high altitude, almost no pressure. And on top of that, I'm going to have it come in a little hot so that it bleeds off a lot of the orbital speed through air resistance again, aero braking again. Now that's only going to bleed off the sort of the top end of the speed, but I'm hoping it'll like the bulk of the high end speed. But I'm hoping it'll come down far enough that the drogue chutes will actually be able to help at that point. So let's try that instead, because I really want to have more fuel available, and like having it ride the engines all the way down, it was not really what I was after. So let's do this again. Let's undock, please. There we go. Switch back over. Do a little bit of RCS to back off from the main ship. Turn RCS back off. We're going to pick a target on the map. Let's do this again. I'm going to land here. Now we are going to let it try to do a land on target, but when it gets the position down to the appropriate level, like within a couple of kilometers. We're going to then abort the auto land and have it pick up after we've already descended through the atmosphere. Here we go. Oh, right. How about if we activate the engine? There we go. That'd be a thing. So let's keep an eye on a few numbers here. The target difference is something that we're after understanding. And we're also understanding the course correction in meters per second, but mostly it's the target difference. So, come on. There we go. This is the target we picked. The one in red, this is the target as it thinks it's going to land in. And obviously it should be trying to do a correction that aligns those two. And it's having a bit of a tough difficulty because it's doing this in the atmosphere. Rather than having time to do it. I think it's in the atmosphere already. It might be. No, it's not. It should be able to solve this, and it's having difficulty. So let's just speed up physics and sort of let it wobble its way into fixing that issue. I should have done this from a higher orbit because I'm not actually saving myself a great deal of time. All right, we're getting close enough that I no longer care about the difference. But what I really want to get it to do is to stop, for heaven's sake. Okay, we got to go retrograde here. To stop trying to do a burn to slow us down here. So here we go. Let's see if this works any better. We're going to do the descent essentially unpowered, and we're going to turn on the landing mechanism. A little bit further down. Yeah, we're essentially going to way overshoot this. Oh, that's okay. So that suggests it should have done a much harder deorbit burn further up. All right, let's see what we can do here. Let's bring this in tight. Come on. This'll do. We won't be landing on the cap, but we'll be within spitting distance of it. Yep. Land somewhere, please. Yeah. Slightly better use of fuel. Some luck, we'll still be able to get back into orbit. We're going to find out in a second. Oh, guess I didn't manage to get one of my, So my chutes have not opened. Oh, very annoying. I guess I only managed to get a few of them. Anyway, there we go. Now, I do have a lot of physical, oh geez, okay, here we go. I do have a lot of parachutes, but they're not decelerating me a lot because, surprise, there's not a lot of atmosphere, which is why a little bit of engine burn here is probably unavoidable. Come on. All the way down, please. Now we're going to have to repack those chutes, obviously, in order to be able to get back to Kerbal later on. But we are here. We are here, and now we are going to go take a look at the surface once we get this. Where is it? Need that ladder deployed. And that ladder deployed. Now we have to get our 3 brave astronauts out of the capsule, down to the surface. And we are sliding a little bit, which is a little bit annoying. That's alright, it's just going to slide very slowly downhill. I wonder if that's a result of the ladder? I don't know. I'm sure we're probably poking into the ground a little bit. Let us do an EVA, starting with Valentina. I think our pilot is going to take a victory lap after descending to the ground here. So here we go. Oh, I did not anticipate that issue. That's going to be a problem because it's going to make it difficult to get back up. But I think that's going to be good grief. You know what? You're just going to hang on to the outside of this thing. Yes, yes. Go on. Can you grab, please? Thank you. You're just going to go along for the ride until everything settles out. That's fine. I think I do have enough rocket power to be able to get off this thing, but in fact, let's try that and find out. Let's open up the rocket pack and see. Can we get up off the ground, please? Oh, that's going to be a problem. Not what I intended to do. Oh, we can just barely hover with the rocket packs. So that's going to enable us to get back in. So we have a redesign to do here. But it does mean that we can get back into the craft. Okay, so we clearly have a faulty design here. Let's go back up to the craft. Let's do an EVA. Come on, Pinkie Pie, go EVA, please. Right. Ooh, that was a bit rough. little bit of difficulties here because apparently reasons. Do I not have a rocket pack? Oh, good, I do. Alright, so you guys are just going to ride the ship down until it finally settles in a few minutes as it gets down to the bottom. That's fine. Alright, so light got in the way of the ladder. Might need another ladder or two. I don't know how far that extends. Yeah, so I have to fix that design just a little bit. Twilight Sparkle, would you care to join everyone else outside the craft? A little bit rough, but okay. So a little bit ahead of everything here. Let's... getting everybody out on board the ladder here is going to take a little bit of effort. So here we go. Oh, looks like we finally stopped. All right. So here's the thing. Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to get a nice little photograph of everyone here. Or at least a nice, yeah, I'll get a screen grab or something of everybody here. We should plant a flag, do all that good stuff. How about you? Do you want to plant a flag? Which way do we want to capture a shot? Let's capture a shot facing the ice fields. So what we're going to do is we're going to take down that flag. We're going to boot it over here a little bit. That's kind of a nice shot. Let's get part of the ship in here as well. So we're going to set things up here, which means I'm going to plant the flag facing this direction. Yeah, okay, that'll work. That'll work. Valentina Kerman, can we let go and come and join Miss Sparkle at the flag? First joint mission to Duna. Pinkie Pie, would you care to join every pony else out here? Yes, whoops, wrong direction. We're going to be going over here. Get a nice shot here so I can share it with a few people. Oh, that's just absolutely magnificent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this shot and then I'm going to try to get everybody back into orbit. And if that works out, I will save it up there. But I'm not going to save it down here just yet because if I can't get back into space, then I'm going to do a more manual landing in order to preserve fuel. I should have enough, but just in case I don't. But I do need to capture a good screenshot of this. Because this is just too epic. So, here we go. Let's see if I can do this. Got a message to me coming in from Discord. All right. No, I don't want to try snippet sketch. Screw off. I just want to... Alright, I need a delay, though. 5 seconds, just in case I have problems. Alright, here we go. We're going to hit new. We're We're going to pop over to Kerbal Space Program, and we are going to get a lovely shot. All right, I got a lovely shot, and I've got everybody being ridiculously adorable. Oh, it just kills me. All right, so I got my screenshot, so I can preserve that. So what I'm going to do now is something I have never done before on the surface of a planet. I am going to set off some fireworks, because that's what these discs are for, and I have not done this yet at all. So let's just get a nice shot here, if I can, with all of our crew, and I'm going to put away the nav ball frame for a moment. And here we go. We are going to set off some fireworks. I have no idea how to do this. Yeah, this is great and all, but how do I actually set it off? Oh, can I only do this back home because it's the only place I have an oxygen atmosphere? Boo! Boo! I want self-contained, I don't know, throw some, I don't know, oxalate or something in the, jeez. Okay, I can only do this back home. Alright then, fine. I will do that back home when I land, because I will be taking this down to land and to basically refuel and relaunch it, because it is designed as a lander that should be able to land on Kerbin as well. So that being said, it's time to get everybody back on board the craft. Now again, because of this goofy design glitch that I did not anticipate, I can't actually use this lower ladder all that effectively. So I'm just going to turn on my jetpack and rocket up. I have to get back a little bit here. Alright, here we go. Nope. There's my upward thrusters and up. Nope. Nope. I gotta have the rockets, the jetpacks a little bit more accelerated. So let's keep an eye on the nav ball again. Oops. Seem to be having a little bit of difficulty pulling this off from the surface. Let's hope I can actually do it. Throttle all the way up, and then jump. Nope, it does not actually matter if I accelerate the throttle all the way up. So that's fine. So what I'm going to have to do, I have to go as high as I can. Alright, now I'm going to have to let go rocket thrust, and nope, I can't do that either. Ooh, this is going to be tricky. Can I get everybody back in? Alright. So this is the new problem, how to get everybody back on board. Let's see if I can... I may have to redo this entire mission, in fact. Yeah, get that flag. It's a collectible. That's not what I wanted to do. Not entirely sure what that was all about. Okay, I gotta get prepared here for... Am I just using the wrong key here? I might be using the wrong key here. Let's try this. Yes, I am. Nope, nope, nope. grab... Oh, thank goodness. Okay. I can now get on board my craft, just like I thought I could before I realized, oh, that's a problem too. I can't actually... So I'm going to have to test this out and figure a better way to do these ladders on this particular craft. So I screwed this up, but that's fine. Okay. So I'm going to have to... All right, this is going to be tricky. Trickier than I thought it was going to be. I have to get everybody home, and I've got faulty equipment. So this is harder than it looks. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. All right. Whew. All right. Too many controls to operate at once. So I'm going to need that, and I'm going to need... Which controls am I going to need? I'm going to need that. I'm going to need that. Okay. Ha! All right. Time to get Pinkie Pie on board. She's naturally bouncy anyway, so this should be totally easy, right? Hoping after all this I have enough fuel to get back in orbit, or I'm going to have a serious redesign here. All right, so here we go. Whew. Rockets ready. Here we go. And oh, hello. Nope, I can't get past that lip. So I really do have to make it all the way to the top. So serious flaw in the ladder design on this. So totally a fix. And board. Whew. Twilight is going to be chastising me for days about this oversight. She's not even the engineer. All right, here we go. All right. All right. Everyone's back on board. All right, so it's time to put away the landing guidance and go into ascent guidance. Right. We only have to get up to, technically up to 50 kilometers, and we can do everything else with the other craft, and so let's actually preserve as much fuel as we can. Actually, I'm going to go a little higher than that, because 50 is cutting it awfully close to the atmospheric boundary. So we're going to go up to 55 kilometers. If this doesn't work, I'm going to have to restart the mission and rethink this in some sense. Or at least restart the descent, but I won't be doing that today. So this is kind of the last thing I think I'm going to do, because I kind of want to order food. Here we go. Oh, I guess G is no longer gear. Oh, there it is. Oh, hello. That was a mistake. I was trying to go for a 0 degree inclination to the orbit on ascent, and unfortunately, you recall I had that really hot, really tight polar orbit. I was at like 40 degrees. Unfortunately, that orbital inclination is absolute on the planetary map instead of relative. So I don't want to spend extra fuel trying to change my orbit at the same time. I'm already kind of sketchy as to, oh god. Oh, that's terrible. Okay. That was probably a mistake. That is a really bad orbital change. But that's all right, because I think I have enough fuel to circularize this, and I can fix this with the main craft. This was a bad bad ascent. I should have probably done this completely manually. And since I didn't have a quick save down there, I can't redo that. Doesn't matter anyway, because if this doesn't circularize, I'm going to have to revert anyway. As long as I can circularize, all of this is salvageable. But I'm not going to do a rescue mission of this. That wasn't really the intent of this. Well, that could be kind of a fun alternative mission. It's not letting me time warp. It's being conservative. Yes, yes. Coast up to the deceleration burn a little faster, please. Or the acceleration burn. The circularization burn. Ugh. Alright, here we go. I am going to be short. I'm going to be short of the... That's a problem. Let's turn on RCS because it may be able to make up the difference. That is really rough. That's why it's in red. I got a lot of monopropellant, though. Alright, well. Let's just accelerate that and see if we can actually close the gap. Did that achieve a stable orbit? Am I going to come crashing down? 55? 54. Oh, that was a Hail Mary. That, or a Hail Celestia, I guess, in this case. Holy crap. Okay, so, because the descent to landing used a lot more fuel than I expected, because it did a pretty hard burn on the... I don't know why. I didn't get a very efficient landing, but I didn't. I had not enough liquid fuel to actually make the ascent, but I did have enough monopropellant to make up the last 15 meters per second to get a stable orbit. I have no fuel. I just have monopropellant. I just have the reaction thrusters. But it turns out that's all I need, because at this point... what I can do at this point is I can get the main craft to match orbits with that with the orbiter and bring her home and dock it, and at that point we have fuel to spare. That is not a cheap burn to get that circularization to happen, but we should be able to do it. However, I am not doing that this time. I'm not doing that right this second because I want to get on and do other things this evening. And this has already been a 3-hour and 35-minute session. And so I will probably do a little bit more of this tomorrow, actually, just to bring this on home and see if I can salvage this crazy mission. Everyone and every pony is safe, and we have a great joint mission going on here, and I have a great photo captured when we were on the surface. So, thanks so much for everyone who joined this, and of course the video will be on the YouTube channel after the stream for anybody who ever finds stuff there. And I think what I'm going to say here is thanks so much for watching with me and experiencing this with me. This is Codeweaver Plays Games. I'll see you next stream.